A few days after the events of the Tomb campaign, things had settled down in Neo-Orcus. Grieve quickly showed off his expertise as a 9-star undead general from the ancient era. He seemed to have retained all his physical art spells he learned back in his previous life, and was now using it to teach the Rebornians and the Dragonborns everything they had to learn. It was quite a wake-up call for the Dragonborns, as Grieve was quite strict about his training routines. He would have everyone up and running very early in the morning while the sun was still hiding in the horizon. Bro Mike, help, Zion said, as he dragged his feet forward, completely beat from the laps he did around Neo-Orcus. Michael looked at the Rebornians and saw them all collapsed on the ground. Grieve was quite harsher on the Dragonborns, giving them 10 times the hardships. Is this all right? He asked Grieve, a little bit concerned. Yes, Michael. Even though this world had changed quite a bit since I died, I am still sure that the physique of these young ones are not quite up to par. They're not even better than our ordinary soldiers, definitely not fit to be a general for your kingdom. At least, I think so. I don't remember. Oh, you old bones. We heard that. Zion shouted back. Hey, no shouting at my junior other than me, said Fudge from atop Grieve's skull. Blah. Michael was, of course, exempt from all of this training under the guise of being a king. Although Michael didn't regard himself as a royal, if it would allow him to skip training, then he would assume that role as fast as a rabbit. Eventually, he was approached by Una and Agnes, who eyed Grievous with suspicion. Sir Michael, about your friend, who is he? Agnes asked, her eyes moving up and down at the skeleton standing upright. Oh, I just found him someplace, he explained. Why? Do you recognize him or something? Agnes looked at the Dragonborns and the Rebornians performing weird stances in unison. They seemed to be training in some kind of weird fighting technique that she hadn't seen before. That way of pure physicality, their importance on using bodily power. I have heard something about that kind of style only once, she said silently. Back when I was a part of the Order, my master Kruger showed me an ancient scroll, and even though I only saw a glimpse of it, I am sure that it is quite similar to what the Dragonborns are learning now. What's it called? The Way of the Emperor, she said. Michael thought about it, and figured that it lined up with what he thought. Since Grievous was a general from the ancient times, then he would have knowledge and mastery of the fighting techniques back in those days. But it was said that this way was lost to time forever. Even the other Heavenly Knights are only privy to sparse scrolls they found survived in the Queen's region, Agnes added. If this is indeed what the Dragonborns are learning, then who is he? Michael looked towards the forest. He is Grieve. He is a Rebornian, he answered. After a while, the construction of the Golden Road had progressed far enough for it to see a glimpse of Angora City in the distance. It wouldn't be too long before the capital city would find out about what they were doing. And according to Una, it would be better if they arrived in Angora City and announced it themselves rather than them finding it out for themselves. It will give you a strategic advantage, Una said. If you earn the trust of the Master of the Magic Tower and the head knight in the knightly court, then you will have enough influence to allow the city to incorporate the Golden Road into their midst. I know how to meet with the Tower Master, Michael replied, but I don't know how to connect with the knights. Don't worry. I will introduce myself and request a meeting in their court. I have a feeling that they would certainly welcome your presence after what you did in the tomb. Una was alluding to the fact that Michael showcased the true power of the Rebornians through the use of their myriads of mithril artifacts. Even knights had limited inventory of relic artifacts, which only consisted of fragments and sometimes broken pieces. Yet, the Reborn company showed up out of nowhere and showed possession of a complete set of them. I wonder how they would react when they find out it's not just weapons the Dragonborns have, but also armor. After a few days of preparation, Michael and his allies finally departed Neo-Orcus to reach Angora City in a few days' time. Michael brought with him the Grieve and the Dragonborns, Una and her escorts, as well as some Rebornians as support. Of course, Fudge and the Shadow Orcs were always present in the shadows, observing everything around them. This would be quite a momentous occasion, as this would be the first time that Michael showed automobiles to the Queen's region. Although it was already quite normal to see cars in and out of Neo-Orcus, It was still too secluded from the societies of the Queen's region that practically nobody knew about it at all. But once Michael showed it off to Angora City, it would eventually get spread to other territories as well. This would all be part of the plan for Michael to break into the Golden 500, the ranking of companies all over the globe. Integral to this plan was Jimmy, who was the journalist correspondent of the Nation of Reborn. He came with Michael to Angora City in the hopes of having his papers be published by his company. Hopefully, this would be enough for the Reborn company to break through to the rankings. What should have been a weeks-long journey turned into mere days due to the speed and efficiency of automobiles. In fact, it would have been much shorter if the Golden Road had finished its construction all the way to Angora City. Michael was on a cliff, overlooking the Angora City in the distance. He saw the magic tower in the distance. Even now, he could see the intricate magic and spells set up by the tower to protect the city from harm. It wasn't that much different from the magic tower back in Kingsbridge City. Just beside the magic tower was the castle, surrounded by a moat. That was where the ruler of Angora City lived. And this castle was protected by the knightly court, which was made up of knights and squires from the order. Those three institutions were what comprised the political landscape of the capital city. "Have you prepared for what's to come?" asked Yuna. "I did," he replied. "I already asked the chocolate merchants to scout a potential headquarters for the Reborn company." "I hope you brought a lot of money," she said teasingly. Angora City is a capital city. Owning real estate there can be quite pricey. Michael looked at Angora City one more time and smirked. At early dawn, the soldiers manning the walls of Angora City were awakened by the sounds of rumbling in the distance. They scrambled to their posts and peered through the looking glass, trying to see the commotion up ahead. Then they saw it. Huge metallic beasts speeding through the flatlands. They immediately rang the bells and alerted their seniors about what they saw. Most of the soldiers prepared for an upcoming war, thinking that they were being besieged by an enemy. But as the news spread through every authority in Angora City, it eventually reached the ears of a certain bearded man wearing a wizard robe. His room was located at the topmost floor of the tallest building in Angora, overlooking the whole territory and the wide regions surrounding it. There, the man saw Michael's automobiles running through the plains at speeds much faster than a horse. He looked at a scroll in his hands. "Dear Tracheus, please welcome my dear friend into your abode, Tower Master. He can be quite the overwhelming little fellow, but he means well. Consider this not as a favor to me, but as a favor to you. It is in your and everyone else's interest to be allied with Michael. Yours truly, Cerberus." Tracheus looked at the automobiles in the distance one more time before teleporting out of the magic tower directly to the walls. The soldiers who were rushing to pick up their armor were surprised at the sudden appearance of the famed Tower Master. "Honorable Tracheus, have you come to help us fend off this enemy?" the soldier asked. The wizard shook his head. "I am here to save you from the misunderstanding. That is not an enemy, so I suggest that you retract your weapons and your fighters, or else our magic tower will be forced to intervene." The soldiers looked up at the floating Tower Master and did not know what to do. A few seconds later, a messenger coming from the castle itself came and shouted out to the soldiers. "False alarm," he cried out. "They are to be welcomed with our utmost grace." The soldiers all looked at each other before starting to unarm the giant crossbows pointed downwards. Tracheus then looked back at the castle and muttered to himself, "Looks like they are interested in the Reborn company as well." Anyone would, especially with the rumor of what they have under their possession. Michael's automobiles finally arrived in Angora City. Even far away, he could already see some curious heads popping out of the walls to peek at their metal carriages. Yuna immediately got out, with Michael just behind her. He saw her take out an emblem of the Montgomery family and show it to the guards, who quickly scrambled to open the gates. Michael looked around Angora City and saw that they were gathering quite a crowd around the gates. Just then, he sensed the presence of a strong mystical arts user. The mana in the air were quite abnormally excited, jittering and pointing his attention upwards. He followed their direction and saw an old man with a scar across his right eye, floating in the skies with his robes fluttering in the wind. "You must be the Tower Master," Michael said, as he floated up to the old man. "Fu-fu-fu. Cerberus was right. You are frighteningly talented in the mystical arts. Why do you say so? Michael asked. I was trying to hide my presence from you. Even resorting to high-level spells, I was still not able to obscure myself in your eyes. Quite impressive. My name is Tracheus Waterdeep, and I am indeed the Tower Master of Angora City. The old man introduced himself to Michael with a respectful nod. Have you heard about me? Cerberus will not stop talking about you, Tracheus said. You don't know how many scrolls were sent by Cerberus, all describing the genius boy of the Vanderbilt family. I have also heard rumors, young boy. They say that you're not only talented in the mystic arts, but you have also inherited the skills of your grandfather. Cerberus says you established your own nation in the rumored wastelands of the South, creating a paradise out of the desert. And not only that, but you have also recently performed quite a feat, conquering the tomb of General Grievous. It caused quite a stir in the higher circles. I wondered if any of that was true, but seeing your metal carriages myself, I can only assume that it is just a fraction of the truth. Michael shrugged, not knowing what to do after being complimented. Thanks, I guess. Do you have any accommodations in the city? If not, then I am glad to offer my tower as your temporary home for you and your allies in your visit to the city, Tracheus offered. Wait, our court offers you a place in our stables as well. Michael looked down and saw Sir John and a couple of other knights arrive at the gates. Hello, Michael. It's been a while, Sir John said, putting his hand across his chest as a sign of respect. We didn't get a chance to speak in the tomb, especially after you conquered it yourself. But after I spoke to my superiors, they have tasked me to invite you to our nightly court. We wish to discuss an agreement with you and your company. I will take you up on your offer after I meet with the Magic Tower, Michael said. Sir John and the knights respectfully backed away and returned to their court. Michael didn't think it would be that easy to reserve a meeting with the Order, but it seemed that the reputation of the Reborn company had finally started to spread. Tracheus, can I visit the Magic Tower? Michael asked. The old man didn't hesitate and agreed. Of course. It would be our honor to have you. It's not just because Cerberus regards you highly, but because I also think that you have a high potential. I will wait for you at the tower. Tracheus raised his hand and teleported out of the skies and back to the Magic Tower. This left Michael and the others alone in the gates. Yuna had already arranged something with the guards, and they were now free to enter Angora City as they pleased. Of course, Michael's first mission in the city was to find a place to sleep in. This would be their eventual headquarters and the place for the Reborn Company Mall. Ideally, Michael would want it to be placed right in the middle of the city, but he knew that acquiring that kind of land would be hard. It wasn't just about the matter of money, but also if it was acquirable in the first place. Michael, welcome to Angora City. It didn't take a while before the chocolate merchants arrived to welcome Michael and his party in the city. Michael used the automobiles and paraded it through the streets, letting everybody see the magic of horseless carriages. It caused quite a stir, having a lot of people crowding the streets just to have a glimpse at this strange new vehicle. Michael let Shiina and Yuna deal with the arrangements of the Reborn Company, while he, of course, went on to explore Angora City by himself. He reiterated to them that this was purely a scientific endeavor, one that would allow them to observe the happenings of this new and unknown place. Of course, he was met with a lot of speculation that he was merely, as they say, playing around. The fact that Fudge was with him made it seem even more apparent to them that he just wanted to slack off in this new city. Thankfully, one of the perks of being the leader of a nation was that he could do whatever he wanted. So, he began walking through the streets of Angora City, looking at the unique architecture and culture that was still in its medieval form. Horse carriages run rampant in the stone brick streets, with their droppings still present all around. For people in this world, this was normal. He walked and observed the food, the people, everything that he could see. He found it quite weird that he didn't see that many demi-humans in this place. They were present for sure, but not to the amount they had back in the King's region. He had heard that because of the expensive living situation in most capital cities, demi-humans struggle to populate them. Just then, as Fudge jumped around and judged the lesser quality of life in this city, Michael came across a peculiar group of demi-humans in the streets. There were a few demi-human teens scrubbing the stables and taking care of the horses parked inside. They seemed to be employees of the establishment in front of them. "Welcome's Inn." Michael stopped in the middle of the street and looked at the inn in front of him. It was still primarily made out of wood, probably about a couple of decades ago, and it looked like it hadn't been renovated recently, as Michael saw evidence of rotten wood and decaying planks. Compared to the other high-end establishments he saw earlier, which were made out of stone, this one looked to be in a very poor condition. Not to mention that this place was located in the slums part of the city. The Welcomes Inn didn't look like a place that was visited much by a lot of customers. But however much interesting this place was, Michael's initial curiosity wasn't with the building. It was with the demi-humans taking care of it. They stood on 2 feet, had bodies filled with fur, and a tail that dragged across the floor. He recognized them because they were the species that Michael first awakened back in the parched lands. They were mankeys. However, there was one stark difference with the mankeys here and the mankeys back at the parched lands. These people had red fur. Mankeys. Species. Red mankeys. Type. Demi-human. Difficulty. Element. None. Just like before, these species were the lowest of the low, having no affinity at all to wield mana in their bodies. Of course, he was able to change that. Now, mankeys were the most talented group in all of the nation of Reborn. Their skills in production, agriculture, and engineering were part of the reason why it had grown and developed so fast in a matter of a few years. Just then, Michael's nose started to itch. It had been so long since he felt this sensation that he thought it was a mere natural bodily reaction he had to the horse droppings on the floor. But no, this was his skill's superior golden nose at work. It was telling him that these red mankeys could lead him to find extremely talented individuals. The last time he felt this was when he met the Dragonborns. If any of these red mankeys proved to be even a fraction as talented as the Dragonborns, then they would serve to be an extremely needed group in the nation of Reborn. Spurred on by this possibility, Michael quickly turned around and introduced himself to the red mankeys. "Hello, sir. Welcome to Welcome's Inn," one of them said meekly, struggling to maintain eye contact. "Welcome, sir." The others followed suit. Michael sent a signal to Fudge, and the violet slime immediately sent out his clones to inhabit the shadows of the red mankeys. And with this connection, ChatJK3 was able to take a peek at their potential talents. I was able to ascertain that one of them had the potential to become a wind swordsman, the other had the potential to become a wrestler of the mound, and several others had similar talents as well. They don't have talent in production. Every yellow mankey had some kind of talent in engineering, farming, smithing, and any other kind of production possible. But it seemed that this group of red mankeys seemed to have a knack for fighting. Although the sample group is still too small to achieve a definitive conclusion, it is safe to assume that red mankeys have a natural affinity to using their physical strength. Michael was intrigued. Fighting talent wouldn't be the first thing he would think of when he looked at the scrawny, bare-bones mankeys in front of him. "Excuse me, but are you the owner of this inn?" he asked them. They immediately shook their heads desperately. No, sir. We just help around," they said. "So you are all employees?" "No, sir, we are in debt." Just then, Michael heard a bit of a commotion happening inside the inn. A couple of seconds later, a man in a suit came out of the inn looking a bit stressed and disheveled. But before he could leave, another man, wearing a plain white shirt and overalls, came out and pleaded to the suited man. "You don't have to do this," said the man in the overalls. "What choice do I have? I can't fend off the officials any longer. If I do nothing, then they will seize everything in this place." The man in the suit looked pained, as if he were about to make a very hard decision. Michael looked to the red mankeys for some answers. "What's happening here?" he asked them. And for what he could piece together from what they said, the man in the overalls was the owner of the inn itself, while the man in the suit was the debt collector. It seemed that the inn wasn't doing well these days, and the owner was able to pay the rent for the whole place. And after a month of overdue fees, the city itself was close to taking back their property from the inn owner. Strangely enough, the debt collector wasn't here to force the inn to pay him cash. Instead, The debt collector was trying to extend the lending period by offering his own money to lessen the burden. "I like what this place stands for," said the debt collector. "I have friends, demi-human friends, and they wouldn't be able to stay in this place if it weren't for this inn. This is the only place that is cheap enough to take them in. So, even if I have to go into debt myself, I will keep this inn afloat." Michael was moved. As it turned out, this inn was the only place that demi-humans could turn to in their hour of need. He looked at the inn and saw multiple demi-humans looking out of the windows, with tears nearly welling up in their eyes. Demi-human mothers were cradling their children, trying to appease them while a tear drops from her eyes. Fathers scrubbed the floors harder in an attempt to try and make things better. They knew that this was the only place that they could afford. Life in the city wasn't that kind of people that didn't have great talents. This was especially more so for demi-humans, who had come from far away to prove that they belonged here. However, the good graces of the owner led the inn to its eventual downfall. While prices were low enough for poor demi-humans to afford, it wasn't enough for it to keep the establishment afloat. Just then, Michael heard a voice coming from his shadow. It was Shiina, who contacted him to report about their current progress in procuring their arrangements. "Lord Michael, me and Miss Yuna have finished our meeting with the owner of an abandoned building in the center of the city. It is an adequate place to establish our headquarters here in Angora City. We just need your order." Michael stayed silent for a few seconds before he looked at the demi-humans distraught in the inn. Then, he turned to Shiina. "Lord Michael, change of plans," he said to her. "I'm thinking of buying another place in the city, somewhere that reminds me of home." Who would he be if not for the help of all the demi-humans back in the nation of Reborn? It was only right for him to save them too. He raised his head just in time as a group of soldiers came marching in, escorting a man in royal attire. Judging from the despaired expressions of everyone in the inn, it was safe to guess that this person was here to officially take back the land that the owner rented. "Greetings. I am here as a royal sent by the governing body of the city to oversee the matter of Welcome's Inn. In accordance with the contract that you and the city signed, this property is now to be seized by the rightful owner once rent has not been paid for 3 months' time," announced the man in regal attire, reading off a scroll. "Rent has not been paid in half a year. Please, can you give us more time?" the inn owner begged. The soldiers prevented the inn owner from reaching the royal before the royal himself allowed it. "I'm sorry," he said. "As much as I would like to help you, this contract is mystically binding. You know what happens when a contract purview by magic is broken. It has dire consequences." The inn owner knew that the royal had no choice. "I know, I'm sorry. The fault is mine, and mine alone." His eyes were sunken from burden. He looked back at the demi-humans in the inn, and he couldn't help but shed a tear for them. Where else would they go now that the inn was about to be destroyed? The royal sighed and took a deep breath before he sent a signal for the guards to start forcing the demi-humans off of their property. There was pain in his eyes, yet he had to do what he had to do. "Wait!" Michael's voice compelled the soldiers to stop their advance. Everyone looked towards Michael, the golden-haired boy in the middle of the street. "What if I paid off the debt?" he asked the royal. The inn owner and every demi-human in the area looked at Michael. In their eyes, a tiny bit of hope flared in their souls, before eventually dying down. "What good could a child do?" "Young man, I'm sorry, but my debt is in the total of 100,000 gold coins. I'm not sure you understand that, but even blacksmiths have to work for 5 years to afford that," said the inn owner. "I'm afraid that debt is doubled if you want to take possession of the inn again," said the royal. 200,000 gold coins are the total. The royal noticed that Michael didn't even flinch once he heard the numbers. "I'll buy it," Michael said without hesitation. It was quite cheap, he thought. If it weren't for the seriousness of the situation, most people would laugh and think that it was cute that a child thought he could afford such a high price. The royal didn't outright dismiss Michael's words. Instead, his eyes narrowed as he scrutinized Michael's face in an attempt to recognize where he came from. He certainly wasn't from the royal family of Angora City, or else the royal would have known it from the start. His attire showed no signs of magical robes, meaning he wasn't someone from the Magic Tower. And his age and lack of weapon in hand meant that he wasn't from the Order either. An inheritor of a company was the only possibility. However, The royal still found no possible answer for Michael's background. He could see a sense of confidence in Michael's eyes that told him that the kid wasn't kidding. Even if you could afford it, this matter has already been passed to another buyer, said the royal. They have already reached an agreement with the city to take over this land and make it their own. Michael looked at the scroll in the royal's hands. Is that the contract for this territory? He asked the royal. Yes, it is. And before the royal could even say anything else, he suddenly felt the scroll thrash away from his control. Why? The scroll rushed perfectly into Michael's palms, allowing him to read the contract in its entirety. Since the royal established that this was a mystically binding agreement, then it meant that this contract was filled with magic and mana. Of course, all he had to do was beckon them, and they came running to his possession. That was his supreme skill. ChatJK3, can you analyze the contract and find a loophole for me to buy this land? Understood. It didn't even take 5 seconds before his personal AI assistant came back with an answer. It flowed into his mind like a wave, allowing him to see the answer. It says here that once the territory has been seized, there is a 1-month grace period for buyers to bid for the territory itself. Yes, the royal nodded, still staring with disbelief at the scroll in Michael's hands. But as I said, the bid has been finished. It has been bought by a company at a price of 300,000 gold coins. Michael nodded and pointed to a certain clause within the contract. But it says here that the bidding for the property has to allow participation from all interested parties. This means that I can still bid for the land itself. The royal looked at Michael. Yes, but it has another clause beside that. Once bidding has finished and another party shows interest, then this new party must bid twice the bid amount, meaning you need to pay 400,000 gold coins. The demi-humans winced. The price given by the royal was something they couldn't even fathom. Its heavy amount crushed their dreams of retaining their current living situation. No doubt they would have to return to camping in the woods to survive, or worse, they would have to be cast out into the parched lands. Such are the difficulties of living in a capital city, said the inn-owner. We'll have to put our land somewhere else, somewhere a lot more lenient with struggling folk. The man tried to put on a brave face, but his creaking voice betrayed his true sadness. No need, Michael said. I'll buy the lot myself. With a simple nod from Michael, 2 shadow orcs emerged. The royal and his soldiers were caught fully unaware of where the pair of orcs came from. It was as if they just appeared in existence in the blink of an eye, which was extremely weird because their huge stature should have alerted the well-trained soldiers from 10 meters away. And without even saying anything, one of the orcs took out a large leather pouch from out of nowhere, about half as big as Michael himself, and presented it to Michael with a kneel. Michael lifted the bag with magic and threw it to the royal's feet, surprising them all by the heavy clinking that came from the impact. It was hefty by the sound of it, and by the time the royal and his guards looked up, Michael was alone in the streets, with no sign of the humongous orcs anywhere near him. They disappeared as fast as they came, leaving everyone to wonder if they were simply just a figment of their imagination or not. This is 500,000 gold coins, Michael said casually. The rest of the money is yours if you process the contract today. After a moment of disbelief, the royal eventually took up the courage and loosened the string on the bag. And as soon as he did, a golden glint reflected back on his face, showering his sight with a mound of pure gold coins. The royal, with shaking hands, took one of the coins and scrutinized it with great care. His royal background allowed him to discern the authenticity of the minted gold. Recently minted, he said, looking at the minimal scratches of the coin. Then his eyes moved to the small inscription at the bottom. It said KR. It's not made in the Queen's region, which means King's region. Just this one clue alone allowed the royal to glimpse at Michael's true background. You're not from here, he said. No, I am not. That was all the royal had to hear. His eyes showed that he realized something when talking to the golden-haired boy. Very well, said the royal. I shall take this payment and personally arrange for this territory to be passed over as your ownership. The soldiers were left confused as to the sudden change in the royal's demeanor. Sir, is this all right? What about the previous buyer? Yes, I'm guessing that even they will have to acquire when they realize who we're dealing with, the royal replied, cutting off the soldier. There is only one group here that has this kind of money to spend, and that is none other than the Reborn Company. The soldiers looked back at Michael with disbelief. The Reborn group? The one that conquered the tomb? I heard that they even went toe-to-toe with the knights. Not just. They did. Sir John reported to his seniors that in a scenario where they had to compete with each other, he confessed that they may not triumph over them at all, said the royal, who was clearly a lot more privy to insider knowledge. What makes you so sure he's part of them? I heard they're a group full of dragon-like beings. The royal looked back at Michael, who was being surrounded by the thankful demi-human inhabitants of the inn. Call it intuition. Did you see those orcs? Those kinds of demi-human won't follow a human even if they had all the money in the world. That boy earned their respect, or else they wouldn't have followed him in the first place. The soldiers took one look back at Michael. Where do we go now? They asked the royal. To the castle, he said. The Duke will want to know what happened here. He's been saying that he wants to meet with the people of Reborn ever since they arrived here. He's been in dire need ever since those conglomerates started their wars. Meanwhile, back at the inn, the demi-humans looked at each other with looks of skepticism, as if they couldn't believe that they were saved at the very brink of loss. Who would have thought that a magnanimous stranger would be able to take control back of the inn? Young man, the inn owner approached him. What did you plan to do with the inn? Don't worry. Our Lord Michael will definitely take care of you all. Shiina and the other Dragonborns arrived just in time, surprising the other demi-humans. They awed at their expensive-looking attire, making them look like the human royals. They had never seen a demi-human looking so happy. Did you guys have fun? He asked them. Humph. I'm sure you have, Yuna pouted. We were just about to close on the deal. She then looked at the demi-humans, sharing hugs of joy once they realized they weren't going to lose their homes. But it looks like it was for a good reason, she said with a smile, playfully nudging Michael with her shoulders. Michael then looked at the inn owner and reached out with his hands. I haven't introduced myself. I'm Michael. The inn owner, named Plato, introduced himself, as well as the other demi-humans in the building. I have inherited this inn from my father. He's the one who created this safe place for unfortunate humans and demi-humans alike. I'm just trying to continue the tradition. Michael looked at the demi-humans in the inn. Most of them were wearing tattered clothes with permanent grease stains, almost to the point of being rags. And behind this attire were nothing but skin and bones, clearly sustaining themselves with the bare minimum. This was a sad sight. After all, demi-humans of their kind were prospering in the nation of Reborn. Catfolks back home were renowned for their agility and speed, useful for performing arts and gymnastics. Lizard men were famous for their strength and acrobatics. Yet here, they struggled to find jobs to keep themselves afloat. I am planning on rebuilding this inn in a different manner, turning it into the base of operations for our company in this city. I will give each of you a choice. Either you stay and live in the new building, or you can go join your brethren back in the King's region, to our nation. The demi-humans looked at him confused. Shiina took this as her cue to present herself and the rest of the Rebornians. She began weaving tales of the paradise in the desert, about how this could be a place that they could call home. I want to see it. My family is still in the King's region. Maybe they also joined your nation. That place sounds even better than here. Please allow us to live there. Most of the demi-humans here had lost far too much hope in living in Angora City. And the only reason why they hadn't left it yet was because they were sure that no one was going to take them in. But now that Michael assured them their own place back in the parched lands, they had no reason to stay here any longer. Of course, there were still some who wanted to stay in Angora City for one reason or the other. If you want to stay, then I will give you a job and a place to live. You will be part of our nation too. Shiina, please make sure that these people are taken care of in the meantime. Michael's trusted Secretary Dragonborn quickly took to work and began to command the Rebornians to start the migration process. But sir, Michael, they are still considered as citizens of Angora City. I doubt that the soldiers will allow them to leave so easily, said Plato the inn owner. I have it under control, said Yuna. All it takes is just a little bit of paperwork. As expected of the diplomat, She was quick to arrange documents for the migration. I'm happy for them. But what am I going to do now? Asked Plato. You could join them too if you'd like. But if you want to stay, then I have a job for you. I want you to do the same thing you've been doing your whole life, an inn caretaker. Part of our business here in Angora City will be a safe haven for demi-humans to seek. Here, they can apply to become a citizen of the nation of Reborn and be sent off to the king's region as soon as possible. Plato's eyes moistened as he realized he could still help demi-humans even if he had lost control of the inn. It would be in even greater capacity now that he would become part of this reborn nation that could spend 500,000 gold coins so easily. Let's talk inside. Show us around the place, Michael said. Soon, the rest of the Rebornians finally had a place to stay for the rest of their visit here in Angora City. Of course, it was only temporary, as they would soon rebuild this into something a little more Rebornian. Seeing the broken flooring, leaking roofs, and lack of flowing water in the room, the Rebornians felt even more thankful that they met Michael. If not, then it was possible they would be living in this kind of place even now. As Yuna and Michael ironed out the paperwork and contracts needed to establish the Reborn company in the city, Zion, Grieve, and Fudge all decided to take a stroll around the city, a dangerous combination if Michael had ever seen one. But since he had an orc accompany them in the shadows, Michael was assured that he would be notified as soon as possible if they ended up creating some kind of chaos in the city. The other engineer Rebornians didn't waste any time and began scouting the inn, creating and planning the blueprint for the eventual building. Soon, afternoon came around and the royal and his guards came back knocking on the inn's door. It's official, he said. You are now the owner of this inn. Michael took the contract and read through it, with ChatJK3 making sure everything was solid. Thanks, Michael said. Before we leave, I have to relay a message to you, the royal said. Who is it from? Michael had an inkling as to who it was. The Duke. He wants to meet with the owner of the Reborn company at your own leisure. You need only to arrive in the castle gates, and you will be welcomed with the utmost warmth. If you'd like, we can also send soldiers to escort you there. No need. I'll visit it when I can, he said, not committing on a promise. The royal didn't say anything further and respectfully nodded to Michael before leaving. He wants to meet with you this soon, Yuna asked, peeking out to look at the castle up in the distance. Usually, royals like him wouldn't show interest in the market. Something must have happened. What do you think I should do, my advisor? Michael said, Oh, so I'm your advisor now. You're the one who knows everything about the Queen's region. It's only natural I come to you for help. HBMH, I still haven't received my favorite ice cream from you. You think I'll help you now? She said, walking backwards away from Michael. I'm trying to find it. Fine, she chuckled. Since you helped out a lot of demi-humans today, I'll help you out free of charge. I think you should meet with the Magic Tower and the Knightly Court first before you meet the Duke. It gives you leverage to negotiate a better deal. You think the Duke wants to come to an agreement with me? It's the only reason why he would want to meet with the Reborn company. It's no secret that you were able to conquer the tomb with your mithril artifacts. He'll probably want to commission a set from you. His seed had finally started to show fruit. Having the Dragonborns show off their mithril artifacts did wonders to spread its name and increase its value. Then this means I'll have to meet with Tracheus first. Hopefully, he'll allow me to access their magic library. Just then, Michael's shadow fluctuated a little bit before Fudge popped out of the ground. Hello, Master and Miss Master. Fudge jumped directly to Yuna and received plenty of head pats. How's the trip going? It's a bit boring, Master. It's so much cooler to walk around in our nation. But it's nice to have all the people look in my direction when I'm walking. They must think I'm such a cool ninja. Michael laughed. Fudge always seemed to forget that a ninja was supposed to be invisible. Oh, Master, Bones Jr. said that he found someone talented. Or at least he thinks he thought so. Intrigued, Michael had Fudge lead him to where they were now via shadow teleportation. Michael ascended behind a crowd of spectators, all seemingly cheering for something in front of them. He looked around and saw that he was in a circular arena of some sorts, with a capacity of about 1,000 people. There were flags all around the arena, each one a different color and having a symbol or insignia of different weapons in the same style. Everyone cheered, pointing Michael to the main event of the arena, a fighting match between two well-armored individuals. "Well, go win this for me, Sir Buckus." "Huh, you think the way of a sword is better than the way of a spear? Keep dreaming. Sir Bran will win this like any other fight he had today." Two knights squared off inside the arena, each one emanating a strength of a 4-star fighter. This is the knightly court, Michael realized. This is the territory of the Order of the Heavenly Knights. And just as Grieve said, Michael did indeed catch wind of a talented individual somewhere inside the arena. Michael felt his superior golden nose ticking off, alerting him of talented individuals. Now, seeing as they were in the territory of the Order, it was more than possible that the talented individuals were the knights themselves. However, since they had already been awakened and became a knight, then it meant that if they had some sort of unknown talent, then it would be in a different category of skill. He would have wanted to find out more, but these knights were fighting in broad daylight. Having his shadow inhabit them for a brief inspection would definitely catch the eyes of some few sharp-eyed individuals, especially from the Order. "Bro Mike, you finally came." Zion pushed himself through the crowd in the bleachers to reach Michael and Fudge. The youngest Dragonborn seemed to have the time of his life, seeing as he was filled with knightly paraphernalia like patched hats and flags all around his clothes. He was accompanied by Grieve, who was completely draped in loose clothing in each crevice of his bones and a hood to cover his face, making sure that no one could discern his true nature. The city here is not much different from the cities that I was familiar with back in my time. At least I think so. It seems that your territories are the only ones that have advanced much farther than anyone else, the skeleton general remarked. Michael then remembered that it was Grieve who sensed the talented individual first. "Can you tell me who you think is talented?" Grieve nodded and looked towards the arena. The two knights were deep in their fight, clashing their weapons with great fervor and passion. For experienced fighters, they immediately saw how the knights exaggerated their moves for the crowd. They clashed their swords more frequently than they avoided strikes, as if they just simply wanted to paint a picture of a more intense duel. After all, the crowd cheered whenever their blades sparked from each strike. But as the duel progressed, it became apparent that one of them was going to win. The knight with the spear held the advantage, parrying the other knight's strikes easily while keeping his distance. He used the spear's advantage quite well and was able to put its tip just an inch above the other knight's neck. I concede, the crowds erupted in cheers, with the spear knight brandishing his weapon for all to see. They cheered even harder, chanting his name even louder. Some even threw clothes, handkerchiefs, and flags towards him in an attempt to show their love for the fighter. "Are those knights talented in your eyes?" Michael asked Grieve. The undead skeleton kept his silence until the two knights left the arena and a few demi-humans came out. They wore simple clothing and wielded no sharp weapons, but wooden brushes and brooms. They began to sweep up all the things the crowd threw in order to prepare the arena for the next fighter. Michael was surprised to see these demi-humans here. Their striking red fur immediately caught his eye. They were red mankeys. "Those are elite soldiers," Grieve said, pointing his gloved hands towards the group of red mankey janitors. "My memory is hazy, but I feel as if I've seen them before. I feel as if I had walked through hell, blood, and fire with their ancestors from before your time. At least, that's what my bones are telling me." Michael believed his general's intuition. After all, he did discover that red mankeys had a natural talent for physical arts. They were basically born for it. "I think it would be best if you could get them under your wing," advised Grieve, with his bluish-green eyes flaring up for a brief moment. Michael went down the arena towards the barracks where the knights and the squires were chatting with each other. He even saw the spear and sword knight with them being treated with bandages. They seemed to be on a break, with their full metal armor unequipped and stored in boxes. "Excuse me, this is for knight personnel only," said one of the men as he chomped on a single bar of chocolate. Then, one of the knights on the back stood up and squinted as he looked at Michael's group. A second later, his eyes widened as he stared at Zion. "That's them," he yelled out. "They are from the Reborn company." He's the one who punched that apex jaguar into the wall. The rest of the knights perked up once they heard the name Reborn. Ever since the Tomb Expedition, the knights in Angora City stamped the name of Reborn into their hearts. It was one thing to showcase their immense strength through defeating a 6-star undead monster, but it was a completely different matter that they turned out to be the one who created chocolate in the first place. Even now, their preferred snack to eat every day was Reborn chocolates. Reborn, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Sir John said that you guys have mithril artifacts. Is that true? I even heard that you guys came here with metal carriages that need no horse. Michael and his group were surrounded by the knights, gathering the attention of the crowd in the arena. Hey, who is Sir Rupert talking to? Isn't that supposed to be a restricted area only for knights? Wait, I heard them talking about a company called Reborn. Anybody heard of it? They're the one who conquered the tomb. Meanwhile, Michael bribed the knights with some chocolate bars in exchange for more information about the Red Mankey janitors. They're quite the earnest workers, the knight said, chewing chocolate cookies in his mouth. They have weirdly strong bodies, which is perfect for janitorial jobs here in the court. Some of them even show talent in the ways. Unfortunately, even if they could swing a sword better than others, it's all useless if they can't wield any magic. It seemed these knights knew about the Red Mankey's natural talents. Can I talk to them? About a minute later, the knights gathered the Red Mankeys and gave them space to talk while they continued on with the fighting arena. Hello, sir. Michael secretly used his shadows to inspect their talents. And as he expected, they all had latent fighting talents just waiting to be unburied. However, none of them had overwhelming talent like the Dragonborns, which was weird because he thought that he would meet at least one S-class talent from them. It was then that Michael noticed something. Back when he met the other Red Mankeys in Welcome's Inn, his superior golden nose skill also triggered. However, he found no one among them with transcendent talent. This was the same case. This couldn't be a coincidence. There must be a reason why his skill was getting triggered each time he met the Red Mankeys. Michael was in deep thought when he suddenly realized Greaves' words from earlier. Those are elite soldiers, he said. What if there was no transcendent individual talent within the Red Mankeys? What if they were all talented as one group, as one species? What if they only showed their true strength when they were in great numbers? As Michael thought about it more and more, the idea seemed to become a lot more solid. He knew instinctively that his guess was right. These Red Mankeys were nothing like the Dragonborns, who each showed tremendous talents in dueling. Perhaps the Red Mankeys were a lot more suited for warfare, as soldiers who moved with 100 men simultaneously without missing a beat, as soldiers who rushed towards their enemy from one call from their general. It would make sense why the Red Mankeys would make such a great impression on a Grieve that he remembered them, even from the grave. Sir, are you from the Reborn Company? One of the Red Mankeys asked. I am. Have you heard of us? The Red Mankeys firmly nodded. We have friends that told us what happened at the Welcomes Inn. We also want to join your nation. Michael was surprised that the news spread so fast. It only happened this morning. This is great, he said. I was hoping to ask you if you want to join. The Red Mankeys were elated, their tails swinging back and forth like a dog. Can I ask if you have any more friends that want to join our nation? They all looked at each other awkwardly. We have our family back at home, in the village. This was exactly what Michael was looking for. He wanted Redder Mankeys to join him so that he could test out his theory about their collective strength as a group. The Yellow Mankeys already showed a version of this back at home. Michael noticed that a group of engineer Hobmankeys working on one project together always seemed to create a faster end product than the other demi-human species. Michael thought it was just their camaraderie as Mankeys, but maybe there was more to it than that, something a lot more innate within their species. I'm sorry, Sir Michael, but we don't know where the village is, the Red Mankeys dejectedly said. They explained that back in the days, once they left their village, they were forever exiled and banned from returning. Their village ensured this by kidnapping them in their sleep and tossing them out in the wilderness so that they wouldn't know their way back. That's what happened with their ancestors back in the day. And since their parents and their parents' parents were born here in Angora City outside of their village, then they could never truly know where they truly came from. But we hear that it's near Angora City. The Red Mankeys were sorry that they couldn't help Michael any further. Michael assured them that he was going to find them sooner or later. Nothing in the shadows can hide from me, assured Fudge. We'll find that village in no time. Michael told them to go to Welcome's Inn for now, and Shiina would be the one to take care of everything for them, whether they want to stay here or move to the nation of Reborn. Meanwhile, he was approached by a few young squires, who were eyeing him with amazement. Sir John would like to see you, mister. Since he was already here, and he had always planned to visit, Michael agreed and followed the squires deeper into their nightly court. No one was more excited for this than Fudge, who began discreetly placing his shadows everywhere so that he could spy on every knight inside. Michael had to warn the little ninja not to go overboard. I really wished I could spar with the knights, Zion said disappointingly. Ho ho, then I shall be your sparring partner later, replied Grieve. That quickly shut him up. Michael was the only one who appreciated the beauty of the knightly court. Everything here looked like it was ripped straight out of medieval England, with mossy stone walls and knights polishing their metal chest plates. The whole circular court was divided into many sections, each one dedicated to a specific weapon. The sword section, named the Way of the Sword, were full of knights training their squires how to properly hold a sword. Their barracks contained nothing but swords, having many different varieties that they could choose from. Beside them was the Way of the Spear, which seemed to harbor quite the rivalry with the Way of the Sword, as they began shouting, teasing remarks at their rival for losing the games in the arena. Everyone he passed, whether they be soldiers, civilians, or even animals, gave him a passing glance and a polite nod when he walked through. It seemed that the rumor about the Reborn company had already spread here as well. The squires eventually led him towards the furthermost slice of the circular court containing the barracks of the Way of the Axe. There, he was welcomed by Sir John and the rest of the knights that saw him in the tomb. Michael, it's great that you decided to meet with us today, Sir John said, shaking Michael's hand. Then, he turned to Zion and offered his hand to him as well. And you, great sir, what is your name? Me, Zion said proudly. I am the great Zion. Sting like a butterfly, float like a bee. Then he turned to Grieve, who was completely covered, obscuring his entire being. I haven't met you before, but seeing as you are part of the Reborn company, I am sure that you possess great strength. Michael was glad that he made special mithril lace clothes for Grieve that enhanced his stealth. He didn't know how he was going to explain how he turned the great General Grievous into one of his own allies. Let's talk inside. We have much to discuss. Sir John led Michael and the rest inside the barracks. They passed through the different rooms for the knights and squires before eventually ending up at the very end of the hallway, presumably Sir John's own office. Please come inside. There is someone very special waiting for you there, Sir John said. This meeting is far too important to be made by me alone. Instead, there is someone a lot more qualified to talk to you. Michael raised his eyebrow before looking past the door with his supreme skill. However, all he could see from the inside were a bunch of random mana. Although it was plenty and of immense intensity, Michael sensed no sign of life mana anywhere inside. Is it not a living being? Michael eventually opened the door, and there he saw in front of him a large orc who had his back turned away from him. An orc? Michael asked. However, as he came closer, he then realized that this was no ordinary orc. That was because it wasn't a life form at all, but instead a projection made entirely out of mana. I apologize for meeting you this way. I would have liked to look upon you face to face, but I am quite preoccupied with something and cannot bring my true form to meet you. The orc walked towards Michael, with the floorboards creaking under his feet, making him seem like a normal demi-human. Even other people wouldn't have known the difference. But he could. We haven't met yet, but I have heard a lot about you. I am Kruger, a heavenly knight. Kruger seemed no different than an ordinary orc. In fact, he looked even more normal than the Orcanine and the Orcupine orcs simply because they were a variant species of orcs. Meanwhile, Kruger was just a simple, ordinary orc with a huge stature and 2 tusks coming out his lower mouth. The fact that he was simply a projection of mana made it seem like he was even more unimpressive. It didn't help the fact that he was wearing a simple training attire, with a plain white shirt and brown shorts. "You're a heavenly knight?" he asked. "In the flesh." "Well, actually not, haha. But, for all intents and purposes, I am a heavenly knight before you," Kruger said, with his hands behind his back looking scholarly and dignified. "As you might have noticed, I am a master of the way of the axe. Do you know anything about the ways?" Michael heard most of it from Yuna and Agnes, who were a little bit more knowledgeable on the fact, but it wouldn't hurt to hear it from a heavenly knight himself. "In this current age, we have considered 10 different weapons as mastered arts in our field. In other words, a way is the field of mastery in which a knight takes in order to achieve heavenly status. Through hard work, talent, and a little bit of luck, I was able to achieve perfect mastery over the way of the axe, giving me the title of Heavenly Knight. There are 10 of us currently, each one a master of their own weapon." Michael saw pride in Kruger's eyes. He seemed confident and assured of himself that he was truly a master at his field. It made him wonder what he would see in terms of mana when he saw Kruger face to face. "Now that I have introduced myself, would you care to do it too?" Michael reciprocated and simply replied the truth. "I'm the leader of the Reborn Company," he said plainly. "Ah yes, the Reborn Company. It has not been long since I have caught wind of its name, but I am already quite impressed with what you have achieved. They say your company has tremendous smithing skills that are almost equal to the dwarves. They say that your products are addictive and novel. They say that your company has established the Orcus town as your own, now known as Neo-Orcus. But perhaps the most impressive of which is the fact that you have both the Orcupine and the Orcanine tribe under your employ. I could hardly believe it when I heard it. Many of my orc comrades even deem it as a myth, especially since no one has ever confirmed the sightings of these orcs together. I would have asked you to confirm this yourself, but I know that sometimes one has to keep their hands in the dark. So all I have to say to that is thank you. I am deeply grateful that you were able to save my brethren from their own folly." Michael shrugged. "They just needed to hash things out," he said. Kruger laughed, knowing the difficulty in getting those 2 orc tribes to work together. "Either way, your arrival here in the Queen's region has driven quite a splash. I am sure that there are many players in the field that are quite surprised at your arrival. You have single-handedly thrown all their plans out the window." Kruger walked around the room as he talked, eventually stopping at the window overlooking the main court, with knights and squires training with strangers in their midst. There was a dragon-like creature, a hooded figure, and a violet slime, talking and mingling with the knights with merry joy. Usually, those spear knights dislike talking with people they do not know, but they seem to be quite happy with chocolate bars in their hands. But let us get to the bottom of why I have requested to meet with you. Your friends down below. Even while I am a projection, I could see that they are brimming to the top with talent. It is quite rare to see a collection of them under one banner, and in such an early stage of their career. They have proven themselves in the tomb, fighting a 6-star Apex Jaguar and defeating it quite handily. But of course, not without the help of those certain weapons, mithril relics. Of course, Michael knew that this would happen. He just didn't expect that he would lure such a big shot so soon. Kruger wanted to meet Michael to discuss these very weapons. "What do you want to know about them?" he asked Kruger. The Heavenly Knight orc looked back at Michael, surprised that he would admit it so easily. "So it is true. There's no point in hiding it," he replied. "You do know that these are weapons of great power, once thought to be erased from the annals of time. Even our orders spent great resources and time gathering bits and pieces of mithril relics. How were you even able to procure such a large amount for your allies?" "I made them," he replied. Kruger's projection momentarily shimmered as his mental state was disturbed for a moment. A heavenly knight such as himself should have achieved inner peace, allowing him to stay unperturbed even in the most surprising of events. Yet, this single piece of news, so casually revealed to him by Michael, made him so unstable that his projection almost disappeared. Is this true? How is that even possible? Even the dwarves have lost the method of their creation. Michael shrugged once again. Not anymore. Long story short, I was able to figure out the method myself with their help. Now, Our nations are working together to create more. Kruger had to sit down on the chair to center himself, lest he lose control of his projection again. You are quite the dangerous man. This is the first I've even heard of the dwarves allying with a human. Michael reached into his pocket to reveal a simple mithril artifact piece. It was one of the test pieces he had when he first started making them. It looked like an ordinary crystal, transparent, and with a small red light coming off of its center. That is the real deal, Kruger said, making his way towards Michael. His eyes couldn't leave the mithril piece, as if it was glued to it. His curiosity eventually got the better of him, and he reached out to the artifact. However, his hands just passed through the mithril piece. Regret filled his face. He wished he had taken the time to meet with Michael face to face right now. If he did, then he would have been able to touch upon the mithril artifact with his own hands. Are you not afraid that such a treasure of yours will attract bad intentions? Michael simply snapped his fingers, with the fire mana leaving the mithril artifact and dissipating into the air. The transparent crystal eventually lost the red light inside its core, leaving it desolate. With no mana inside, the mithril artifact turned ashy white, before eventually turning into a crumpled piece of metal, even more fragile than paper. Kruger looked at Michael, his eyes flashing as he began to realize the power this 11-year-old boy held in his hands. So, you're the only one who could produce mithril artifacts, and you are the only one who could distribute it. I was right. You are quite the dangerous character. With complete monopoly over the greatest weapons in existence, Michael was perhaps the most sought-after man in the entire world. The world just didn't know it yet. What do you plan on doing with your mithril artifacts? Are you planning on selling it? Kruger asked with an inquisitive tone. It was clear what he was trying to convey to Michael. Kruger wanted them too. For now, I can only release a limited supply, Michael said. But the price for my artifacts is not something that I want to sell for money. Kruger nodded, completely understanding Michael's stance. For what I hear, your company is doing quite well in Angora City. Chocolate pastries and armors, quite a strange combination, but has been able to gather quite the reputation for being money magnets. I'm sure you have no trouble with gold. So, what do you want for mithril artifacts? Knights under your control? Influence on the order? Scrolls of forbidden physical art spells? Michael smiled. Friendship, he said. Friendship, Kruger repeated. For a second, his face contorted into one of confusion as he tried to discern the hidden meaning behind that word. Was it a weapon name? Was it a territory? But when he looked at Michael and saw the look of sincerity on his face, Kruger realized that the request was genuine. Ha 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 ha. He then burst out in laughter, with his voice echoing down the court and surprising a few knights and squires in training. You are quite the greedy little fellow, aren't you? You don't want one thing. You want everything, Kruger said, staring at Michael. I just believe in the philosophy of helping each other out. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. There's no need for pricing. If you need something, I will gladly give it to you. And if eventually I need your help, I hope that you can lend me a hand. In short, I want to be friends just like how I'm friends with the Dragonborns, the Rebornians, and the dwarves. Let's all help each other out. Kruger couldn't wipe the smile off his face. By basing their relationship, not through contracts and business deals, Michael was guaranteeing a long-time partnership with him, one of the only 10 heavenly knights in the entire world. If it was any other human, Kruger would have been wary that he was being taken advantage of. His influence as a heavenly knight was universal, only below that of the rulers like the Ocean King and the Draconic Queen. But Kruger felt Michael's genuinity. He walked over to Michael and reached for his hand. All right, I accept your friendship, Kruger said with a big smile. Michael reached for his hand as well, using his supreme skill to manipulate the mana and the projection to have a solid handshake with the heavenly knight. After the meeting ended with Kruger, Michael left the room and was immediately met by Sir John, who had a permanent surprised expression painted on his face. What happened back there? I just received word that you were allowed full access to our dungeons. Before leaving the meeting, Michael asked Kruger if he could take a peek into the court's physical art spells. He didn't forget his original goal in going to this place. This was the perfect time to catch up, All the spells that ChatJK-3 knew were full of mystical art spells, which was of no help in training the Dragonborns and the other fighters in the nation of Reborn. Although Grieve was there to teach them about fighting, the undead skeleton was quite forgetful of normal, basic spells. By gaining access to the bulk knowledge used by the knights to train their own people, Michael would be able to finally impart that knowledge onto the Rebornians. Michael was eventually led down into the spiraling tower case, down into their dungeon. Sir John gave him a small tour, showing all the equipment they stored as a backup. In these small caves, kind of like an underground prison, there were plenty of weapons and armors haphazardly stacked up to the very ceiling. Eventually, he was led into the very end of the room, and before he even entered, he already smelled the scent of old books wafting over from the room. And when he finally entered, he saw shelves filled with scrolls made out of papyrus papers. Each one was magnificently preserved and categorized based on their contents. Just like the court, the whole library was circular, with each slice showcasing the different physical art spells for the different weapon masteries. "Is there any particular spell you would like to learn? I can help you with it," said Sir John. "There's no need. I'll learn them all." Michael walked to the nearest shelves and picked up one of the scrolls near his eye line. It was a simple 3-star spell specializing in the sword called South Wind of Cuts. When he unfurled the scroll, he saw a magic circle filled with the magic theory surrounding the very spell. Normal knights would take months to master such a spell. Sir John, expecting Michael to be completely absorbed in studying the scroll, eventually left the room and walked back up to the court. Michael looked around the circular library and began to use his supreme skill to make contact with the subtle mana imprinted into the very ink of the scrolls. These written knowledge were not just simply inked down, it was imbued with mana from an experienced user, allowing them to put their insights and learnings into the paper itself. And once that teachings had been passed on over to another person, the magic would cease to exist. This was the reason why scrolls were expensive. But of course, Michael didn't need any of that at all. He simply just needed ChatJK-3 to scan all the magic theory in the room and copy it for himself. So, he began manipulating all the mana in the room, with the scrolls levitating from out of their shelves and unfurling themselves right in front of Michael. With mana in the ink, his personal AI assistant was able to see all of the knowledge and analyze them to the maximum degree. Progress to next update, 20.23%. Progress to next update, 27.73%. Progress to next update, 39.26%. With each scroll, Michael's progress to the update began increasing. In a matter of a few seconds, Michael was able to copy the magic theory upon tens of thousands of physical art spells. The knowledge washed over his mind, bringing him the acuity to perform these spells adequately. Michael thirsted for more, with the speed of consumption becoming faster and faster. Progress to next update, 49.99%. Progress to next update, 50%. Congratulations. You were able to achieve basic mastery over physical art spells. System is currently going on an update. Complete. Hello, Michael. I am ChatJK 3.5, and I am your personal AI assistant. Michael felt even more attuned to his own body. Every fiber of his muscles were intertwined with unity mana, allowing him full control over his own mobility. His bodily coordination shot through the roof. I have successfully integrated all the physical arts knowledge in the 13,532 scrolls and adjusted your mana gathering technique accordingly. It is now 83% more efficient, allowing you to exert more power with less effort. Is that why my body feels so good? The leftover consciousness from each scroll gave deep-felt insight into the mind of masters. All those knowledges are now stored into your body, whether you actively know it or not. In other words, Michael's muscle memory was probably even better than that of the Dragonborns, which was quite unfair for them since they were the ones who had been working hard to train. Meanwhile, all he had to do was read 10,000 scrolls, and he was able to perfectly acclimate his body into the perfect vessel for physical art skill. Michael did find it to be a bit of a letdown that he wasn't able to improve ChatJK 3 to the next software. All he got was a half-step upgrade, which was good, but not better than he hoped. The capacity needed for the software to upgrade increases with each reform. The scrolls contain only basic information about physicality, which transformed your body into an athlete, but wasn't able to transform your mind into the next level. I knew that, he said at ChatJK 3.5. Thankfully, there's a lot of other nightly courts here in the Queen's region that I would someday be able to visit. For now, Michael had to be content with the fact that he had a modicum of master over physical art spells. Just like last time, he was now able to completely create a new skill from pure imagination. He could compose 5-star and below physical art spells in a matter of seconds. This would serve well with the Dragonborns and the Rebornians who severely needed a lot more firepower in their repertoire skills. With nothing left for him here, he walked back up to the main court, where Sir John was caught unprepared for his arrival. "You were only gone for half a candle. I'm sorry. Did you not get what you were looking for?" Michael shook his head. "I was able to learn it. I just need more," he said. Of course, Sir John couldn't have possibly known that Michael learned every single scroll in their dungeon, nor would he even think that it was possible at all. "Did you see where my friends went?" Zion and the others completely went off on their own while he talked with Kruger, so Michael had no idea where they were now. "I did see them go with the other knights earlier. I think they went back up to the arena," Sir John said. Knowing those three, Michael was sure that they were up to no good. "You guys have healers here, right?" He asked only because he was sure that Zion wouldn't be able to hold off his excitement and end up hurting one of the knights. "Why?" Sir John asked. "I think they want to pick a fight with the knights. You guys have healers here, right?" If it was any other person, Sir John would have scoffed at the question. But since he saw what those Dragonborns were capable of with his own eyes, he knew that there could be trouble brewing. "I'll get the bandages," Sir John said, worryingly. As Sir John scurried off to warn the knights about the monstrous genius called Zion, Michael was left all alone. He was going to go to the arena, but all of a sudden he saw the shadow of the walls morph and change in front of him before two shadow orcs emerged. It was Naruto and Sasuke, the two leaders of the Orcanines and the Orcupines. "Is something the matter? We have observed an important conversation taking place, so we decided that it was best to report directly to you," said Naruto, bumping his chest as a sign of respect. "Important conversation?" Michael asked, intrigued. He transported himself and the orcs back to a more private location. "We have spread our forces everywhere in and around the city. There is no corner in which we do not have our ears on them. Usually, we hear plenty of nonsensical chatter spreading around that we ignore. But in matters of the Reborn Company, we are always fully alert," said Sasuke, with the quills on his back shaking to produce a shrill sound. "Ever since the tomb incident, there is one particular group that has caught our attention. The Hammerstone Company. We have disturbed their plans for improving their ranking in the Golden 500, and they are not too happy about it. Competition always brings some sort of friction. That was natural. He even heard that the Hammerstone Group was a subcompany of the Hephaestus Company, one of the largest conglomerates in the world, just like his grandfather's business. What did you find out?" "Nothing as of yet, Boss Michael. It's happening as we speak." Michael looked back at the shadow orcs, with an idea forming in his head. Meanwhile, at the very center of Angora City, in the heart of the business district of the capital, was the headquarters of the Hammerstone Group. Their armory was the premier store for everything made out of metal. Every group, company, or guild needed armors and weapons for their security, and they were the ones to get it from. At least, that was before a mysterious group came out of the jungle and showed off their new armor and weapon sets, completely setting a new standard in the city. They were slowly losing control of the flow of armor and weapons everywhere. In response, the Hammerstone Company only had one choice left to do. They had to ask help from their parent company, the Hephaestus Group. Every Hammerstone employee welcomed their arrival on this very day. Butch, the leader of the company's adventurers, made sure everything was perfect. After all, these visitors coming from far away were from the main Hephaestus Company itself. The double doors opened as 5 individuals stepped foot into their building. Maids and butlers laid out a red carpet for their arrival, but they didn't seem to care that much at all and continued to walk forward. "I sincerely welcome you to our building." Butch's words tapered off as the fire-hooded figures continued to walk past him, completely ignoring his attempt at establishing relations. "There is no need for pleasantries. We are here for one thing only: establish dominance." One of the hooded figures picked up a sword from their large collection and bent its blade with no force required. "Do you know why your company is losing revenue?" the hooded figure asked. "It's because they are losing faith. They don't believe that the Hammerstone Company is strong enough to deliver the best equipment." Butch lowered his head. "What shall we do?" "You shall do nothing but continue to improve the quality of the swords and armors you make. That should be easy enough, seeing that you are all a part of the Hephaestus Company. But we have a different job. We shall show that our strength is even better than the knights and the wizards. That is how we build trust." Meanwhile, in the shadows flickering in the chandeliers, there were 3 figures lurking above. It was Michael and the 2 orcs. From an outsider's perspective, Michael's entire body was as natural as the paint on the wall. If they looked directly at him, they would notice nothing and simply thought that he was part of the wooden ceilings up above. His mastery over mana allowed him to be completely devoid of it as well. There was no light mana emanating from his body, mistaking him as a non-living being, as an object. Of course, he could have just used the orc shadow skill to obscure himself, but he thought that this was a better stealth option overall. "We have arrived here to solve the situation. And solve it, we will," said the hooded figure. Thanks to Narito and Sasuke's timely report, Michael was able to witness the arrival of the hooded figures in the city. "Any idea who they are?" he asked the orcs, using the 2-star spell, Variable Sound, to transform the waves of his voice into a straight line that directly transmitted the sound to their ears without any leakage. "Rumor has it that they are part of an elite task force from the Hephaestus Company trained to be elite soldiers," Narito replied, showing Michael the written reports of his orc subordinates. Instead of sending a blacksmith, they sent out soldiers instead. This told Michael one thing: they planned to use strength to showcase their dominance, especially after their failure in the Tomb campaign. He heard from Fudge that Butch's main goal during that time was to be the first one to conquer the Tomb, which would gain them a lot of reputation within Angora City. But with their failure, they lost some of that reputation, which directly led to their sales plummeting down. And now, the Hephaestus Company sent down elite soldiers to remedy this failure. The owner of the Hammerstone Company is quite disappointed. He fully expected you to be able to reach rank number 494 this month around. But it seems it's more likely we get rank number 496 instead. Butch bowed his head, ashamed. "I wish to convey my deepest apologies to the owner. As a direct descendant of Hephaestus, he deserves only the best of the best. This failure is mine." The hooded figure nodded, accepting Butch's apology. "But not to worry. We shall solve this problem in a matter of a few days, or else we would not have been called the Stone Cold Six." The rest of the Hammerstone employees hid their gasps at the revelation of their name. Their reputation as fearsome warriors triumphed even that of the Knights of the Order. Rumor has it that they could even defeat those that were 1 star higher than their own level. Soon, hopeful smiles flashed across the faces of every Hammerstone employee. With the appearance of the Stone Cold Six, Angora City would hopefully see the strength in their company again. Michael noticed that there were only 5 of them here in this room, meaning there was one missing. "I've already sent out one of our own to fulfill the first mission," said the hooded figure. "Establishing dominance in the knightly court. Stone Cold Six will bring triumph against the knights, that you can be sure." Michael nodded to the 2 orcs in front of him. They heard everything they needed to hear. They sunk back down to their shadows and disappeared, with no one the wiser. Meanwhile, back in the knightly court, the friendly competition between the different knight factions were routinely going on their way. The Way of the Spear, the winner of the previous fight against the Sword Knight, was now the reigning champion within the court. He raised the green flag with the insignia of a spear stitched on the front, with the crowd cheering him on for his dominance. However, before he could be crowned as the winner of this competition, there was just one faction left remaining. It was the Way of the Axe, led by none other than Sir John. They were the true reigning champs of this competition. Sir John, specifically, had been quite the tough opponent to beat. It was even more apparent as the two knights fought. Sir John's axe was as heavy as a mountain, yet his swings were so fast, as if he was wielding a rapier instead. It didn't take long before he won and became the champion of the competition. But just as Sir John was supposed to raise his flag in victory, someone from the crowd suddenly threw a cold blue glove towards the arena, landing just in front of him. Sir John eyed the glove and then looked towards the crowd. He knew what this meant. It was a formal challenge. "I humbly ask for your teachings," a hooded figure asked. As a proud knight, Sir John never shied away from a fight. He swore an oath to always honor a challenge. "Very well," Sir John said, scrutinizing the hooded figure. "But I will not hold back my strength, even for someone that is 1 star below my level." Even at a distance, Sir John was able to discern that his challenger was only a 4-star realm fighter. "It's only fair," the hooded figure smiled. Then, he jumped onto the arena, taking off his hooded robe all in one move. He revealed himself to be a bald, manly figure encased in intricate icy blue armor. His muscles bulged perfectly in the metal, as if it was molded specifically for his body. The number 5 was stamped on his back armor. "What do I call you?" Sir John asked. "You can call me 5, the bald man replied. The crowd cheered in an uproar. The sudden appearance of this new challenger excited them to no end. Just from his armor alone, they knew that this would be an extremely entertaining fight. "Whoa, look at his armor. Isn't that the emblem of the Hammerstone Company?" "Oh yeah, it's stamped on his chest." Soon, everyone knew that this new challenger was adorned with a full Hammerstone armor set. Only the result of the duel would tell if the armor could withstand the heavy, cleaving strikes of the famous Sir John. Meanwhile, Zion, Grieve, and Fudge finally returned to the arena after exploring every single barracks in the court. They became quite preoccupied with stuff since Fudge insisted on visiting every corner of the court so that he could spread his clones everywhere. "Oh, look, Fudge, you made us miss the fight," Zion said, his shoulders sagging in disappointment. "It's not my fault," Fudge said. As the two kept arguing, Grieve walked forward and looked through the crowd. Eventually, he saw a strange sight. Everyone in the crowd was silent, as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Grieve looked down and saw Sir John on the ground, with his axe split in half. He was panting while looking up at a figure in front of him. "He lost," Grieve uttered. Zion and Fudge eventually caught up and saw the scene for themselves. "Huh, how could Bro John lose?" Zion asked. Just then, the figure who won the fight suddenly faced the crowd. "This is dominance. We're the best fighters in all of Angora City. Hammerstone Group will prevail, and no other company is better than us." Zion was triggered by those words. He was about to jump in, when all of a sudden, he felt a tap on his shoulder. He looked behind and saw Michael. "Before you go, I have a few gifts to give you," Michael said with a smile, raising his hand to bestow some new skills for Zion. With ChatJK 3.5's mastery over physical art spells, Michael was able to whip up new skills customized specifically for Zion's talents. Information washed over to the young Dragonborn's head, giving him the magic theory required to turn his innate movements into something that was bathed in mana. He figured out how to draw deep from his unity cores and spread it to a specific muscle group with the right amount of force and quantity to release the maximum amount of power required. After the transfer was over, Zion's eyes glinted in understanding. "What do you think?" Michael asked. "Thank you, Bro Mike. These are so good." Zion excitedly punched the air, a crisp whipping sound echoing in the arena. This small preview of strength was enough to catch the attention of the reigning champ below. The warrior named 5 looked up at the bleachers and squinted as he looked at Zion, scrutinizing the Dragonborn. "Hey bro, can I play next?" he asked 5, jumping down the steps to stand on top of the wooden railings. The bald man's eyes showed confusion as he felt the points of power within Zion to be lower than his. And upon using a monocle that determined a person's cultivation strength, 5 realized that the Dragonborn was only at the 3-star realm. Was that just a fluke? 5 muttered under his breath. For a brief second, he felt an explosion of mana from Did you hear me, bro? Zion asked, cupping his mouth outwards with his hands. You wish to challenge me? I'm willing to accept, but are you sure? The crowd that was so silent once again erupted in hushed whispers. They had seen how dominant Five was against even one of the best knights in the entire city. Sir John was of no match to him. It took less than a minute for the renowned five-star knight to completely lose control of his own weapon. Somehow, Five was able to completely overpower even the tremendous force of the axe and split it in half. This was a feat that silenced all knight supporters. Even though Five was only in the 4-star realm, he was able to beat someone 1 star higher than his own cultivation. And now, Zion wanted to challenge Five while being 1 star lower than him. Let's fight. You look fun, Zion said as he jumped down onto the arena, with dust particles exploding beneath his feet. Sir John, who was being carried away by his fellow knights, only had one thing to say to him. Be careful, he said. Sir John had completely underestimated his opponent, leading to his humiliating loss. One of the greatest sins that a knight could commit was losing their weapon in battle. His mastery over the way of the axe should have prevented this from happening at all. Yet it did. His weapons and armors are top-notch. It's not the kind of thing that is produced here, he warned Zion. Of course, if he knew that Five was part of an elite task force called the Stone Cold Six directly from one of the biggest conglomerates in the world, then he would completely understand why his weapon was unable to survive. No worries. It's just a fun little fight, Zion said, rotating his shoulders in preparation. It was as if he didn't even hear Sir John's warning in the first place. And why would he? His face showed no sign of worries that his weapons and armors would be destroyed like the others. It was made from Reborn. There was no better equipment to be had. Meanwhile, Five scrutinized Zion's face and swung his spear in the air. Blue frost permeated the weapon, with mist evaporating in the air. You are from the Reborn Company, are you not? Five said, pointing the tip at Zion. Of course, the guy did his research. It would be stupid of him to not know the very reason for their failure in the first place. Yeah, I am, Zion announced proudly, with Fudge cheering him on from the bleachers. The rest of the crowd began whispering to each other once again. Not a lot have heard about the Reborn Company and only knew their involvement in chocolates. So, a lot of them were surprised when rumors began to spread about the Rebornians' exploits in the tomb. What? They're the one who conquered that discovery. Yeah, and you know what I heard as well? They said that the Reborn guys were able to hold their own against the Knights and the Hammerstone group. That's how they emerged victorious in the tomb. I heard they used special weapons too, like real rare stuff. Wow, I should visit their armory then. Five bit his lips as he heard the discussion around them. Even though he put on a dominant show of force against the Knights, somehow, the Reborn Company was still able to steal it away from them. Five then spread his arms and looked at the ground. Listen here, every one of you. This is going to be a duel not only for ourselves, but for the company that we represent. Then he pointed his spear at Zion. Whoever shall win this battle will revel in the admiration and respect of every single person in attendance. And whoever loses will have to admit here, in the presence of everyone, that their company is the inferior of the two. A fire lit up in Zion's eyes. He looked back up at the stands and saw Michael and the rest of his friends looking over at him with a smile. Kick his ass. Fudge cheered. A good old-fashioned duel. Ho ho. I may not remember much, but I do know the triumphant feeling of, as Senior Fudge would say, kicking someone's ass. I would like to see it again. Even Grieve was pumped up. Go have fun, Michael said to him with a thumbs up. That was the only permission Zion needed. He looked back at Five and gave him a thumbs up before turning it into a thumbs down. Let's fight. Five immediately rushed to Zion, with dust exploding out from behind him. His spear was pointed directly at the young Dragonborn's unarmored chest. Zion punched the air, with the force transferring into the air like a wave and reaching Five's body at the speed of sound. With a single slice of the spear, Five disrupted the punch's power before rushing forward with the tip toward Zion. The young Dragonborn skipped in place like a boxer, moving left and right rhythmically before dodging out of the spear headed towards his chest. When his thrust missed, Five swung his spear to try and reach Zion. but he was able to duck away at the last second, countering with an uppercut aimed towards the chin. 5 stepped back, using the bottom of his spear as leverage, with Zoin's punch creating a huge shockwave up to the air, but hitting nothing else. The crowd stood up, surprised at the electric fight they were witnessing today. Zion smiled and looked at his opponent. He was just getting started. He charged towards 5, punching with a left jab. 5 parried the punch with his spear, but that wasn't the end of Zion's attack. It was a 1-2 punch. Zion's immense speed and power left 5 completely vulnerable as the Dragonborn landed a heavy punch to the liver. Zion's space-breaking punch sent 5 shooting towards the wall. Everything happened so fast that the only thing that the audience could see was a blur before 5 crashed into the wall, creating a reverberation in the arena and dust flying everywhere. The crowd got up their feet and tried to look beyond the cloud of dust to see if the fight was over. But as dirt settled, they saw 5 standing perfectly still, with his cold blue armor perfectly preserved. There was no dent or scratch on his body. Even the smile on his face was enough evidence for everyone to know that Zion's punch was not able to do any significant damage to the bald man. Whoa, who is that demi-human? His punches are insane. But it's even more impressive that 5 is able to take that punch head-on without even feeling anything. That armor must be amazing. I never knew Hammerstone could create such an amazing craft. 5 smiled as he heard the compliments to his armor. This was precisely the reason why he let himself be hit. You were a good comparison for my armor. Now they know where to buy theirs if they want something good, he said to Zion. Sorry, but I'll have to finish this fight. A cold blue aura emanated from 5's body as air and water mana to combine into an icy spell in his body. Hephaestus frosty wind. 5 screamed out, empowering the tip of his spear with a 4-star ice power. The crowd gasped as they saw that even the dust underneath his feet began to frost. 5 lunged towards Zion, thrusting his cold-tipped spear to his chest. Zion sidestepped away at the very last second before a sharp icicle extended from the tipped spear and easily pierced through the wall behind the young Dragonborn. The bald man continued to swing his spear towards Zion. Unlike last time, each of his swings released a burst of powerful 4-star icicles that could pierce through even the toughest of steel armor. With each spear attack, Zion was forced to step back more and more. Winter Wonderland. 5 cried out as his legs began to turn completely icy blue. It was as if his whole leg was frozen into an iceberg. With the power manifested into his legs, 5 stomped on the ground, spreading frost and ice outwards. You can't keep running away forever, 5 taunted as he stepped forward and swung his spear at Zion. The ground beneath Zion's feet turned into a slippery ice terrain just before the cold-tipped spear arced towards him from above. 5 hoped that this would disorient the young Dragonborn and prevent him from stepping away in time from his spear attack. Yet, he seemed to have underestimated his power. Zion simply punched the air, creating a shockwave that was enough to deflect the spear's trajectory, allowing the icicle to just slip past his ears. He then used a 1-2 punch beneath his feet, the shockwave creating a cracked crater on the ground, effectively destroying the flat terrain that made the ice become so slippery in the first place. Too late. 5 screamed out as he thrusted his spear towards Zion. Iced encasement. A blue ball of energy launched from the tip, freezing anything unfortunate enough to be caught in its trajectory. The frozen sphere of energy crashed upon contact, creating an iceberg that encased the young Dragonborn. At least, it should have. 5's eyes widened as he saw the icicle start to melt just as fast as it was created. Mist and steam erupted from the iceberg because of how fast it was disintegrating. What? How? Zion emerged from the iceberg completely unharmed. 5 thought that he would at least incur frostbite from being hit by a 4-star spell's direct impact. But then, he noticed that the iceberg never encased Zion at all. There seemed to be an invisible spherical barrier that prevented the spell from reaching the Dragonborn scales. It was what also melted the ice so quickly. I wanted to win without using the Unity defense, Zion said, disappointed at himself. In fact, he was the only one upset at himself. Everyone could see that he, a 3-star realm fighter, was able to withstand the full frontal attack of a 4-star spell. He even came out of it unscathed. That was supposed to be impossible. Well, whatever, Zion shrugged. I guess I have to use my real skills now. Zion took out a single piece of chocolate bar from his pockets and raised it in the air. He released it in his mouth and swallowed it whole. Then, an explosion of power and aura permeated the arena. Even civilians who had no idea about cultivation felt the immense spike in power from Zion. 5 stood in the arena, with his face completely contorted into confusion. He slowly took out a monocle from his pockets and placed it on his eye before staring directly at Zion. There, he saw 4 points of light in his abdomen. He was in the 4-star realm. This is impossible, he cried out. Even the best cultivation pills found in the market couldn't have possibly created such a drastic change in power. This was the power of superior sugar rush. Consumption of chocolate immediately boosted his power by 1-star realm. Are you ready? Zion asked. Try and hit me. The young Dragonborn rushed towards the flustered 5. But immediately after sensing danger, the bald man sobered up and took his spear in self-defense. 5 thrusted his spear 20 times in a matter of seconds, leaving no chance for Zion to come close to him. If he tried, then icicles would pierce through his body. But Zion still pressed through. He put both of his hands on his chin and ducked downwards before weaving left, and right as he moved toward the barrage of spear thrusts. Dempsey, roll, he whispered. Zion's body began to blur, making it seem like there were after images beside him. Seeing this chance, 5 pierced his spear directly towards Zion. The Dragonborn didn't even try to duck away. But surprisingly enough, 5's spear passed right through Zion's head. It was as if he pierced through only a mirage. Panicked, 5 increased the intensity of his spear thrusts while stepping backwards. Ice particles began to shimmer in the air, but none of them were able to touch a single scale on Zion's body. The young Dragonborn continued to weave left and right, completely dodging every spear that came his way. How? 5 was now face to face with Zion, with the advantage of his long spear already long gone. In a last-ditch attempt, 5 encased his entire spear with sharp icicles growing out of the shaft and swung it towards Zion. But Zion just ducked under it quite easily. And while squatting down, Zion began to gather up all the power inside his right fist. Unity mana, powered by the sugar rush, began to course through his veins and give him tremendous power. Zion looked up at 5 and saw a panicked expression on his face. He smiled and prepared his finishing move. Gazelle punch. Zion burst upwards with an uppercut, hitting 5 squarely on his stomach and sending him flying outwards. 5 was sent crashing into the wall, creating a large dust explosion that covered everything down below. The audience got up off their seats once again and waited until the dust settled. A few seconds later, they saw him. And unlike last time, 5 was not able to brush off Zion's attack like it was nothing. He lay down on the floor, groaning and crying in pain as he held his stomach. That was so fun, Zion said, shuffling his feet, ready to go another round. Guh. Impossible, he muttered, grasping at the dust on the ground. The audience looked at Zion and shouted to the top of their lungs, cheering at his dominant display of power. Whoa, he just defeated a 4-star fighter. How did he become so powerful all of a sudden? Did you see what he ate? Wasn't that chocolate? So, it's true that if you eat chocolate, you become a lot stronger. I'll have to buy a whole crate today. That's not all. He was able to defend against the frost of the other guy because of some strange invisible shield he had. Do you think that it's from one of their armors? Hey, let's visit their armory later. It was a clear display of dominance. Zion showed a powerful burst of strength, as well as an enduring defense that could take even the power of a 4-star ice fighter. Yeah, I knew my junior would win. Fudge screamed. Serve him right. Excellent display of fighting skills, Grieve commented. Zion reveled in the applause, taking in all the cheers and claps coming his way. He performed a few light jabs for the audience, which seemed to have riled them up even further. But unbeknownst to the audience, 5 was not yet done. He secretly took out a white pill from his pockets and chewed on it with his teeth. The pill broke into a powdery mess, which was instantly absorbed into his body. Whatever he ate seemed to have contained copious amounts of mana as his body began to go wild. The new supply of this energy allowed his body to temporarily fix the 8 broken ribs in his chest and fix all the internal injuries he sustained from Zion's gazelle punch. However, the side effects of this consumption seemed to have reddened his eyes and made his face twitch uncontrollably. Whoa, watch out! Suddenly, Five burst out towards Zion with renewed strength. However, the Dragonborn swiftly turned around and faced his opponent once again. Only now did the other people notice that Zion suddenly wielded black gauntlets with violet cracks all over it. The appearance of this weapon took away everyone's attention. They couldn't seem to stop looking at it. Unfortunately for them, Zion raised his gauntlets and performed a straight jab with his right hand, meeting with the tip of Five's spear. The two weapons collided, creating sparks in the middle of the arena. Magically adept people then began to notice an unusually strong amount of multi-elemental mana bursting out of Zion's gauntlets. It was so powerful, in fact, that it began to overpower the renewed vigor of Five's attacks. Cool. If it weren't for the pill Five consumed, he would have immediately recognized the power hidden within Zion's gauntlets and knew the eventual result of crossing weapons with him. But his newfound power messed with his logical reasoning. The gauntlets exploded in power, pushing the tip of the spear backwards. The force was enough to bend the shaft unnaturally, before it became too much and splintered into 1,000 pieces. But that wasn't the end of that. Zion's gauntlet followed through and eventually reached Five square in his chest. The bald man's icy blue armor began to permeate with frost, trying to fight the power of unity from the gauntlets. Five's face crumpled as he tried to stubbornly withstand the force of the punch. But eventually, the ice in his armor began to melt. The water and air mana being supplied to the chest plate was counteracted by the fire and earth mana present in a unity-powered gauntlet. The icy blue armor that imitated the long-withstanding and eternal icebergs of the Arctic released a final burst of energy before losing all its color and power. The metal chest plate crumpled from Zion's punch, completely destroying the armor and leaving it no good for anything but scraps. Five looked at his own armor with disbelief, his red eyes not enough to convey his grief and frustration. It was only now that he looked up at Zion and realized that he lost. "You win," Five muttered with the last of his strength. He collapsed on the floor, ending the fight entirely. The crowd was silent for a second, before erupting in an even bigger applause. They began throwing all sorts of congratulatory gifts towards Zion. The young Dragonborn looked at all the towels, flags, and handkerchiefs before raising his hand in triumph. "I'm a reborn Ian," he proclaimed. And with his words, the audience began to chant Reborn in honor of his win against Five. Isn't Hammerstone armor supposed to be stronger than that? That demi-human completely destroyed that guy's armor. We got to talk about his gauntlets. What kind of power was that? It felt like it could even destroy a mountain. Reborn, Reborn, Reborn. I'm going to be a fan of their product from now on. I want to have their chocolates and armor. Even the knights from the court began to congratulate the young Dragonborn. He was able to successfully restore their honor by beating Five so badly that even his armor was destroyed. Meanwhile, Michael clapped for Zion from the stands as well. Seeing the power of customized physical art skills really solidified the importance of this new upgrade for ChatJK 3.5. He wasn't even sure that the Dempsey roll and Gazelle Punch skills would work because it was something he only saw in his previous life, but his personal AI assistant was able to convert those normal moves into something powered by mana. There were plenty of other moves Michael could borrow from his life on Modern Earth, some of which would fit perfectly for the other Dragonborns. Speaking of whom, Michael's shadow contorted in front of him as Shina's voice echoed from the other side. "Lord Michael, I heard my little brother's having a lot of fun." Michael scratched his head awkwardly. "Ah, yeah, it's just a little experiment. Ahem. I would like to remind you, Lord Michael, that it is customary for elder siblings to be the first one to receive gifts." Ah, of course, of course. Oops, the line is breaking up. Signal's too low here. Michael got out of that conversation as fast as possible, even if his excuse didn't even make sense. The Dragonborns will serve as great generals of their own, said Grieve. I'm not sure about their talent to lead an army, but their strengths are definitely enough to be considered as a leader. At least, I think so. Michael also couldn't see Zion becoming all serious and leading an army himself. But the young Dragonborn was definitely full of surprises. After the fight in the arena, Michael and the Dragonborns taught the knights how to drink beer properly, with one hand on waist and chugging a mug in one go. They may have inadvertently became a bad influence to the righteous knights. The after-fight party was small, consisting only of the knights and Michael and his group. The squires immediately surrounded Zion, asking him if he could teach them some of his moves. Those who chose to become a part of the Way of the Gauntlets were the ones who asked with a little bit more fervor in their voice. Teach us, please. The way you punch is so fast and quick. I've never even seen someone duck and dodge like you. And those gauntlets, can you show us? Is it really made out of mithril artifacts? Zion graciously accepted all the compliments with a humble tone, saying that what he did was nothing special and all that. But of course, the smirk on his face said that he was enjoying the attention everyone was giving him. He began punching the air and shuffling his feet, performing his shadow box training session for the knights. Michael noticed that the squires and knights from the Way of the Gauntlets were similar to the boxers of the olden days in his previous life. Their postures were completely rigid, with their hands just awkwardly positioned in the front. It seemed that the boxing techniques in this world were not yet that advanced, seeing as they were completely bewildered by a simple feet shuffle. Michael, while the other knights were having fun with Grieve, Fudge, and Zion, he was approached by Sir John, who was walking on crutches on both sides. "Are you recovering well?" he asked Sir John, and the knight replied with a nod. "My body can walk tomorrow, but my mind needs more time to recover. My axe is my lifeline. The fact that it broke means that I should have died in that arena." Michael consoled him. "You didn't know," he said. "I heard that Five was someone from a conglomerate called the Hephaestus Company." "Ah, I see. Then it is no wonder that my weapon was not up to standard. It also explains why he is not yet recovered by his team." "What do you mean?" Sir John explained that after the fight, the knights nursed Five back to health. Usually, he should have been recovered by the Hammerstone Company by now to be treated at their building. But no one had claimed him yet. This meant that Five was most probably abandoned by his company. Those conglomerates are quite strict. A single failure can be enough for you to be fired and cast aside. It seems that whatever Five was trying to do in the arena, he was unable to fulfill it, leading to his dismissal. Michael found it to be a cold-blooded act. But that's just the way things go. Even in his previous world, a single mistake could cost anyone their job. And seeing as Five was strong enough to defeat a 5-star knight like Sir John, he would have no trouble finding another employment in another company. By the way, what was that pill that he consumed? It was most probably a cultivation pill. Usually, those are only consumed during meditation in order to increase the amount of mana intake into the body. But he used it while in an active state, which led to all sorts of side effects on his body. Sir John then looked at Michael awkwardly, as if he was having trouble if he wanted to say something or not. "This leads me to a favor I need to ask of you." "What is it?" "Our whole knightly court wishes to procure chocolates and armor directly from your company." Michael's eyebrows raised, intrigued at the proposition. "We saw how inadequate our equipment is, and we are in dire need of an upgrade. Your weapons and armors have proven to be of the best quality we have seen in recent years." Of course, Michael said yes. Becoming the weapon and armor supplier of the Angora City Knightly Court was a big opportunity that should not be let go. Although, I do have to remind you that chocolates have no real effects, right? We Rebornians just have a special skill that allows us to take advantage of its properties. Sir John still insisted on having chocolates become a part of the deal. Even if the effects are not as substantial as young Zion over there, we still feel a little bit of improvement upon eating chocolates. And even if it is just a figment of our imagination, we have become addicted to its sweet taste. Even now, The knights were eating chocolate while drinking beer at the tables. Michael eventually acquiesced and struck a deal with Sir John and the rest of the knights. And before they shook hands, Sir John had one last request. "Oh, and can we also get more beer?" After the celebrations in the court, Michael and the others returned to their headquarters in the city. They returned to Welcome's Inn, which was now completely covered in a large cloth enclosure that obscured the whole building from the outside. The sounds of muffled hammering echoed on the outside, revealing that there was construction going on under the blanket. This was all part of Michael's plan to renovate the whole building and turn it into Reborn's Angora City headquarters. Upon passing through the cloth clover, Michael saw that the whole building was destroyed from the inside, and the wooden structures were replaced with concrete pillars for more stability. The new and old Rebornians made their homes in makeshift concrete rooms on the bottom floor. Michael saw that the red mankeys from the arena earlier had successfully reunited with their relatives here. They thanked Michael immensely for his help and asked if there was anything they could do to make it up to him. Since their talent laid in fighting rather than constructing, there wasn't any job they could do right now. So, he suggested they follow Grieve for now. The undead General Skeleton quickly took control of the red mankeys and began making them do all sorts of physical construction jobs to toughen up their bodies. "Welcome home, Lord Michael." Shiana greeted Michael and reported to him everything that happened while he was away. Thankfully, nothing out of the ordinary. "Did you have a productive day?" Yuna asked. He told her the deal he struck with Sir John and the knights, which gained him approval from the diplomat. "Now, you just need to meet with the Magic Tower and gain their approval. Those two factions will be enough to persuade the Duke to let your Golden Road pass through Angora City." "I'm planning on doing it tomorrow," he said to her. In the meanwhile, since he wasn't going to do anything tonight, Michael ended up helping the Rebornian engineers with the construction of the headquarters. And with his mastery over mana, the progress skyrocketed, allowing them to completely finish construction in a matter of hours. By the time the sun rose in the sky, the new building was ready to be unveiled to the general public of Angora City. Reborn became the talk of the city because of yesterday's fight in the arena. Word was spread quite fast, which prompted a lot of people to search for the Reborn Company all over. That was until they were led by some soldiers into a grand building in the middle of the street. Reborn Company. Huh, where did this stone building come from? Early in the morning, the citizens of Angora City woke up to the sight of a huge stone building erected in the middle of the street. This was definitely not here before, because they would have remembered the sophisticated architecture of the structure. Reborn Company? You mean the people who conquered the tomb? I only knew them for chocolates. Didn't you hear about yesterday? They defeated someone from the Hammerstone group. Eventually, a crowd had gathered in the front, bringing in more curious citizens looking to find some answers. Suddenly, the revolved around itself to reveal a pleasant-looking woman wearing a dress. She looked at the crowd in front of her and bowed to them in deference. "Welcome to the Reborn department store, dear valued customers. You're now free to enter," she said. The curious onlookers broke out in hushed whispers, hesitant in taking the woman's words for the truth. They had never heard of a department store before. "Please come in and take a look at our wares." She walked back to the revolving door, with some people bravely following her in. And when they saw what was inside, they were completely stunned and bewildered. Everywhere they could see, there were shelves upon shelves containing a variety of metal equipment and armors of all kinds. Everything shone even in the dim light, exhibiting its high quality from even far away. Each shelf had a specific equipment stored. On the very left side were for arm braces and gauntlets only, while the one next to it were meant for chest plates and shoulder armors. People began to walk through the shelves until they reached the very end, where a counter was located. There were several demi-human employees behind the desk who bowed politely at the potential customers. "Welcome, sirs, madams. Would you like to try our new chocolate desserts?" Beside the desk were crates and boxes full of chocolate goodies. There were visual depictions of a man and woman eating chocolates with a satisfied smile on their faces, which stimulated the appetite of anyone looking at them. One of their very first customers approached the desk shyly. I would like to buy a bar of chocolates," he said. The attendants on the other side smiled at the customer. "Of course. Would you like to buy our new leather shirt that is both stylish and protective? If you buy one now, you can avail an entire box of chocolate for yourself for only 100 gold altogether. The man immediately nodded and pushed a sack of gold to the counter, receiving his new shirt and box of chocolate. The other people who heard this couldn't help themselves and bought one for themselves as well. It was too good a deal. Michael looked down the balcony, overlooking the entire department store. It had been a couple of hours since they opened up their new headquarters to the public, and already the entire floor was being swarmed by adventurers and civilians alike. As soon as the first satisfied customer left the building, the news spread like wildfire. People began visiting this obscure part of the city just to take a look at the Reborn department store that seemingly got constructed overnight. It was an unbelievable story to most of them, which was quickly proven true once they visited the actual building. Curiosity was what pushed people to enter the building. Quality products were what forced them to stay and buy one for themselves. Look, this uncommon man-key armor set looks durable while being easy to move through, said one of the adventurers pouring through the armor on display. This one looks like that Dragonborn we saw yesterday in the arena. It even has the same fiery red color, said one of his friends, pointing at the armor set inspired by Zion, which was currently displayed in a glass. I know. I want to buy that rare Dragonborn chest plate, but it's too expensive for me. The incredible display that Zion put yesterday increased the reputation of Reborn products in the city. Almost everyone heard about it by now, and, timely enough, they could now purchase their own Reborn armor here. Zion's weapon and armor triumphed against Hammerstone equipment. That was enough assurance for people to believe that Reborn's quality was top-notch, leading them to buy it in droves. Even civilians who had not held a single weapon in their hands ended up purchasing leather armors and decorative weapons just for their pleasure. Congratulations, this uncommon Rebornian steel sword comes with 10 free chocolate bars. Enjoy, said one of the cashiers as they handed out the customer's sword in a grand wooden box with a symbol "R" carved on it. Sweet. Zion's consumption of chocolate during the fight also helped increase the popularity of chocolates, with others believing that they could also become super strong like him upon consumption. All in all, the first day of business in Angora City turned out to be extremely good. Business is doing well, Lord Michael. Shiana approached Michael with a bunch of papers in her hands. It sure is. I have heard from the Shadow Orcs that a lot of the companies in the city expressed their surprise at our new department store, she said, looking at her papers. It's only natural, he replied. I'm sure they're trying to find out how we were able to accomplish such a big construction job in just under a day. Should I instruct the Shadow Orcs to create illusions and mislead their investigations? Michael shook his head. No, let them find out about concrete. Shina's eyes lit up once she understood Michael's intentions. I see. Once they find out about concrete, they will inevitably contact you to purchase their own supply. Yup, he replied, smiling. The more this rumor spreads, the less we have to do to advertise our products. The female Dragonborn respectfully bowed at Michael, once again surprised at his genius. Well then, I shall make sure that they accidentally find concrete in our inventory. Shiana left, leaving Michael all alone with just a shadow. Narito, Sasuke, what did you find out about the Stone Cold 6? Maybe I should call them Stone Cold 5 now, since they're down one member. The two Shadow Orcs emerged from his shadow, kneeling. Just like the other companies, they are surprised that we were able to create such a big project. They are even more surprised that it has garnered a lot of customers on the very first day of our opening, which has directly caused theirs to plummet, said Narito. What do they say about 5? They are shocked at his loss, but attribute it to nothing more than the failure of 5 and not the strength of Zion. They still don't consider the appearance of mithril artifacts as real, and they just think that Zion used some kind of special weapons and armors, said Sasuke, completing the report. Michael thanked the two Shadow Orcs who had been stationed this whole time in the Hammerstone Company to survey their surroundings. Continue surveillance, he said to them, and the two descended back into the shadows. With his preparations done, Michael set his sights onto the tallest spire in the entire city, the Angora City Magic Tower. Michael lets the Rebornians take care of the matters in the new department store and journey out to the city in search of the magic tower, which wasn't that hard since all he had to do was look up, and he could see its towering structure piercing up to the heavens. Once he reached the base, he came into the familiar sight of the strange black material that the whole tower was made out of. Everything looked the same as the tower back in Kingsbridge City, with barely any difference. The tower here was more plentiful with water mana, but that was about it. Its very entrance was a large, arcing structure, which was a portal that led directly inside. He walked through its swirling green liquid, and as he did, he now only realized that the magic structure of this portal was similar to the pocket dimension he came through in the tomb. This one was a lot more sophisticated, with complicated intertwinement of mana and use of exotic materials, while the one at the tomb used a very crude form. Of course, he absorbed anything he could glean from the portal. As he stepped foot over the portal, he found himself inside the tower that opened up to a room with a large domed ceiling. There were mages and wizards walking around with books in their hands, completely preoccupied with whatever they were doing to even give a glimpse at him. They wore robes and cone hats, with some even having magical spells weaved onto the very fabric itself. He realized that it probably helped increase their magic power, but only marginally. It was like a single drop compared to a whole bucket like the mithril artifact. He walked through the hallways, seeing moving paintings conversing with him or the other mages that passed by them. Now that he was a little bit more adept in magic, Michael saw through the whole magical structure behind it. It contained intertwining complicated magic theories that allowed the figure in the painting to move like a real human. But seeing no light mana present in their bodies, he knew that they were not a living being at all. They were more akin to the robot animatronics back in his previous life. Although they moved like a real human, they only did so because they were programmed to do so. Maybe this could be good for an advertisement billboard, Michael thought to himself. After exploring the first floor of the magic tower, he came across a certain hallway that was quite familiar to him. He followed it down and led him to a library. And even from far away, he could hear that familiar sound of wooden clicks and clacks echoing from the inside. Michael walked closer and saw the library, which was filled with mages and wizards facing each other with a wooden board on top of their square tables. They were playing Reborn chess. This was a nostalgic sight for him, as this was where he got most of his mystical art spells. He had to hustle a win against unsuspecting wizards who would never have thought that he was the one who created Reborn chess in the first place. I heard that this is how you met Cerberus, Tracheus said, shimmered into existence beside Michael. Yeah, did he tell you how? Oh yes. He's still salty about it after all this time. He keeps warning me and everyone he could talk to that we should never fight against you in a battle of Reborn chess, or else we'll lose all our dignity. Too bad. I was planning on challenging you to a game. Michael chuckled, remembering the white-bearded old man. We can play, but no bets, I don't want to end up like Cerberus. Michael and the Tower Master took up a spot in one of the tables below, which garnered a lot of attention from the mages and wizards playing. Whoa, the Tower Master is playing? Who is that boy? Isn't this bullying? Fighting a child is not fair, Tower Master. Tracheus simply laughed upon hearing the words of his colleagues. Don't you know who this guy is? He asked them. He then picked up one of the boards and flipped it over, revealing a simple but imposing symbol, R etched in the middle. The Reborn Company. Most mages knew about their name solely from the chess boards they played with every day. And since these mages were essentially hermits who never left their towers unless absolutely necessary, they didn't hear much about them aside from that. He's the owner of Reborn, Tracheus revealed. The mages and wizards took a look at Michael again, disbelief forming in their faces. They thought that the creator of this game was someone as old and wizened as the Tower Master, but it turned out to be a product from an 11-year-old boy. No way. Michael started off the game, moving his pawn 2 blocks forward. Your new department store is truly something to behold. Even we were caught unaware, the Tower Master said, mirroring Michael's move. It's all due to our proprietary products, of course, with the help of a little bit of magic, he replied, moving his knight piece. A lot of companies are knocking on our doors about that, asking if we had anything to do with the construction. They don't believe that stone could be built that fast. Of course, we told them no. Our magic tower remains to be a neutral party in the matters of commerce and business. Did they believe you? Michael asked, capturing a pawn. Most of them did, but there was one group that was quite adamant. You probably know them by now, seeing as they're your biggest competitor in Angora City. Michael looked up at Tracheus. Hammerstone Company, he guessed. Yes, since they are the sub-company of the Hephaestus conglomerate. Their influence was quite hard to deflect. They are willing to pay a lot of money to have us help them construct a similar department store in their territory. But we told them that even with all the money in the world, we can't help them in that regard. Tracheus replied, moving his queen to a more favorable position. I have noticed that they are quite aggressive in their attempts to become the dominant company in the city. Why is that? Michael asked inquisitively. Tracheus waved his hand and cast a simple silence spell in a sphere around them to make sure that the spectators couldn't hear his next words. It's because they're planning on creating a monopoly in the city, Tracheus revealed. They want to become the sole provider of everything metal. And by doing so, the owner of Hammerstone will stand a better chance in competing. Michael raised his eyebrow. Competing in what? There is a current competition going around in the Queen's region. Angora City is still far away from the heart of the region to feel its effects, but we will be inevitably involved in it. Sub-companies of the conglomerates like the Hammerstone Company are making big moves in order to gain more money and territories at an increasingly fast rate. I hear they're planning to make their own golden roads. Michael showed genuine surprise. He thought that he was the only one in the entire region making a golden road. After all, the original one had been abandoned and left in the dust all those years ago. They're building their own golden roads? He asked, incredulous at the coincidence. Who would have thought that people would start their own projects just as he started his? Yes, Tracheus confirmed, moving his bishop piece to the corner. It has been an open secret to leaders like us that a competition has started between the up-and-coming companies in the Queen's region. At first, we thought that they were simply having a friendly rivalry among them with no specific goal in mind other than profit. But then, we noticed that all of those companies were connected to the main conglomerates controlling the global market today. That is no coincidence. What's weird about it is that the conglomerates themselves aren't the one making the moves. It's their sub-companies. You don't know anything about this? I'm sure the Vanderbilt family is participating in this too, with your cousins or aunts and uncles making moves with their companies. He shook his head. Even though he was part of the Vanderbilt family, he was barely related to them in name. He wasn't surprised that he wasn't informed about any of this. His grandfather didn't even show up when Michael awakened his supreme talent. Probably none of them even know about the Reborn business. So, it was safe to say that he was never going to be included in the Vanderbilt business, which in all honesty, he didn't care about. Whatever they were planning, he wasn't going to be involved. At least, not in the name of Vanderbilt. I can see why they would want to start their own golden road, he said, pondering. The potential for profit is extremely high in the short term and in the long term. To be honest, I'm wondering why they never even tried it before now. He only started the project because he coincidentally arrived in Orcus Town, where it all started back in the olden times. So this makes him all wonder, why now? He asked Tracheus. Is there a reason why they suddenly think building a golden road is profitable? Tracheus went silent for a moment and made another move on the chessboard. This is only a conjecture of mine, an educated guess if you will, but I think it all has to do with the current agreement between the Ocean King and the Draconic Queen. Michael stared at Tracheus, wanting him to continue his words. Long story short, the agreement between the two rulers now allows for easier and faster travel between continents. This means that we'll probably see a lot of tourists from other parts of the world in the coming years. I'm sure you already see the importance in controlling the Golden Road. Michael was stunned. He never knew that such a huge shift in global politics had occurred without him even knowing about it. He could already see the implications of this with regards to tourism. It was no wonder that companies now were pouring billions and billions of gold coins in order to get a great start in the upcoming boom in tourists later. By controlling the Golden Road, they could control the flow of tourists and commerce. Michael felt incredibly lucky that he stumbled upon Orcustown and found the Golden Road. Due to a total coincidence, he was able to unknowingly prepare the Reborn company to compete in the tourism boom. To be honest, I am building my own Golden Road, he confessed to Tracheus. This seemed to have surprised the old man quite a bit. And you knew nothing about the agreement between the two rulers beforehand? Michael shook his head. Ah, Tracheus laughed, making the spectators around them wonder why the Tower Master was laughing without any sound. What's so funny? It's nothing. I just find it incredibly satisfying in my old friend Cerberus' misfortune. He has always expressed his regret about you not becoming a fully fledged wizard because of your immense talent. Now I see that your business acumen may be even more monstrous than we think. You have inherited your grandfather's intuition, making you all the more suited to continue your path as a businessman. Michael scratched his nose awkwardly. Let's get back to the topic at hand. You're building your own Golden Road? Where? Neo Orcus. It was previously known as Orcustown until they joined our nation. Tracheus creased his forehead, trying to remember where he heard the name Orcustown when it suddenly hit him. That place? Isn't that where the original Golden Road was located? How were you able to do all of that? Last I heard, they were getting plagued by frequent earthquakes and aggressive orcs. Michael explained everything to Tracheus, how he arrived at the place, how he renovated its structures, and how he reunited the two orc tribes. The Tower Master was so engrossed in Michael's story that he completely forgot to make a move on the board for an entire 2 minutes. Amazing, he uttered. The original Golden Road is a tried-and-true method to efficiently disperse commerce throughout the Queen's region. If you're able to complete its construction, I think you may have a chance at winning whatever game they're playing. Michael wasn't doing it for their competition, but it wouldn't hurt to win something as well, whatever that was. One of my current goals in Angora City is to ask the Duke for permission to allow the construction on my Golden Road here. Do you think that you could help me out? Put in a good word? Michael asked politely. This kind of favor wasn't that easy to fulfill since the Guild of Arcana always tries to remain neutral in these sorts of earthly affairs. You're not the first one to ask me about this, Tracheus revealed, squinting. I've already been approached by a certain company within Angora to try and gain the favor of the Magic Tower. Michael looked at the chessboard and uttered the name on the tip of his tongue. Hammerstone. Tracheus nodded. Yes. The owner of the Hammerstone Company is a direct descendant from the Hephaestus conglomerate. As you may have experienced for yourself, the Hammerstone Company has been trying to increase their value for a while now. He wants to prove to us and everyone else in Angora that they are the company that has the best potential to reach the greatest heights. Ow! The Golden 500. He is the only one in the city with that kind of credential, which is truly impressive on its own. And by increasing his rank by at least one place, he can prove that he can lead a company to a successful future. A confused look was painted on Michael's face. Why would he want to prove that? Because he wants to become the main sponsor for Angora City. He wants us to become part of his assets in the upcoming Golden Road War between the sub-companies. This will ensure that he has enough allies to contend against his peers. Michael stayed silent and thought it through. The Hammerstone Company wants to make Angora City to be a part of its Golden Road? He asked quietly. Not just that, Tracheus sighed. I have a feeling that if we side with the Hammerstone Company, we will be caught up in their fight as well. And as unfortunate as it may sound, this Golden Road War will have to shed some blood. Michael pursed his lips. He disliked violence, but acknowledged the need for it in certain circumstances. Ideally, he wanted everything to be solved amicably, but not everyone was going to think the same. Then you should just refuse them, he said matter-of-factly. That is the problem. There is reason to believe that if we don't side with them now, then eventually some other company is going to want to force us to side with them. Companies are trying to get their hands on as many territories as possible, becoming the dominant monopoly in their market. And by influencing the leaders of those territories, they can ensure that no other company could build their business within it. Our city may not feel it yet, but we're going to get involved one way or another. It's just a matter of who we side with or who we make enemies with. Michael could see the dilemma facing the Tower Master. He could understand how he may feel trapped between a boulder and a hard place. If they side with the Hammerstone Company, then they may be forced onto a fight they never asked for. And if they don't side with the Hammerstone Company, then they may not have any allies if some other company comes knocking in the future. But now that I know that you're planning on building the Golden Road here, then my decision is easy. I will cast my vote onto Reborn. Michael's face lit up. Really? Thank you, he said genuinely. Tracheus couldn't help but chuckle after seeing Michael's response. You still quite underestimate yourself. Anyone would gladly side with you if they knew that you were the only one that can produce mithril artifacts in the world. Not only that, but those automobiles that you showed off a couple of days ago were something that anyone with a decent mind could see as a revolutionary product. In my mind, even if your company hasn't entered the Golden 500 ranking, it is already at the top of the list purely for potential. Michael laughed awkwardly and looked at the Tower Master. So, I'm guessing that's your request to get a mithril artifact for yourself. Ho ho ho, was I that obvious? Michael nodded, promising to give him a gift. Since you're a friend of Cerberus, I will gladly procure a specialized mithril wand for you. Your speciality is water mana, right? Tracheus nodded with a little bit of surprise. I didn't think that you could sense my mastery over water mana so easily, but I guess that's why they call you a genius. Thank you. With their conversation done, Michael moved his queen towards the very corner of the board, away from all the action. By the way, I have just one tiny request from you, he asked the Tower Master. What is it? Tracheus half-heartedly answered, as he was still trying to figure out the reason for Michael's move. I want to visit your magic library. Only now did Tracheus realize the magnitude of Michael's previous move. It was a discovery check, with Michael's bishop having line of sight towards his king after the removal of the queen. From there on, there was no other move left. Checkmate, Michael said with a smile. You let me see the magic library, right? Thank you. Tracheus slumped back to his chair, laughing in despair as he was completely bested without him even knowing about it. After the game, Tracheus led Michael to the very top floor of the Magic Tower. Just like the one back in Kingsbridge City, this was where the Tower Master lived for the majority of the day. He saw books and magic scrolls neatly placed in floating shelves. There were also magic circles inscribed on blackboards using white powder. And most eye-catching of them all was the giant sphere of floating lights in the middle of the room. This was a magic library where all the magic in this tower was stored. This contained both basic and unique spells, Tracheus said. Basic spells are those that are readily available to the public and can be obtained by buying our magic scrolls. Unique spells, on the other hand, are rarer, as they can only be found here or on other magic towers. Tracheus explained that all the studying and experimentations done by the mages and wizards of this tower were getting stored in this very room itself. All their hard work in creating, formulating, and testing new spells were condensed in each node floating in a circular orbit in the sphere. In other words, asking to access or even just see this magic library could be considered as an invasion of privacy. I appreciate it, was all Michael could say. Tracheus laughed. Since Cerberus already asked him a favor to accommodate Michael, Tracheus already planned on letting him see the magic library. It was also good to let an amazing mystic genius like Michael to learn as much as he could so that it could benefit the community in the future. And since Michael was planning on giving him a mithril artifact as a gift, it would be extremely greedy for him not to let him take a glimpse at the magic library. After all, even a tiny piece of mithril sold for a whole lot more. Of course, he didn't know that just a single touch was all ChatJK 3.5 needed to completely devour all the knowledge hidden inside the library. I will be down in the tower practicing my chess skills, so take your time, Tracheus said, teleporting out of the room to give Michael some privacy. Michael didn't waste any more time and approached the giant globe of floating lights. He raised his hand and touched one of the lights, creating a ripple effect among the interconnected lines. Accessing Magic Library. Downloading all its contents. Progress to next update, 50.64%. Progress to next update, 65.32%. Progress to next update, 73.09%. Michael closed his eyes as a flood of information washed over his mind. It felt like physical books and magical scrolls were zooming towards him and crashing into his head at fast speeds. With how fast they were going, he could barely see a glimpse of what was inside, but as soon as it entered his head, he learned all its contents as if it was there in the first place, and it was only now he remembers it. As he consumed knowledge, the magic library sphere shimmered for a brief second as it couldn't handle the hungry devourer called ChatGPT 3.5. Progress to next update, 84.81%. Progress to next update, 91.42%. The progress continued to increase until finally it reached the maximum. Progress to next update, 100%. Initiating software update. Michael opened his eyes, completely unaware of how much time had passed. Hello, Michael. I am ChatJK4, and I am here to be of your service. Just ask anything you want, and I will try my best to answer it. The disembodied voice of his personal AI assistant brought him back to the real world. I feel different, he said to ChatJK4. Yes, Michael. This new software update allowed me to consolidate all the basic physical and mystical art spells that you have gathered throughout the years. I have taken upon myself to optimize your mana flow to maximize its efficiency. He looked at his own body and barely even felt the unity mana course through his veins, which was quite impressive for how volatile and powerful they were. It was smooth now, perfectly mixing the mana flow for his mystical and physical arts in the most efficient way. But it wasn't just him who felt different. ChatJK4 felt different too. It looked like he was talking to an actual human assistant now. Back then, the voice was indeterminate and wasn't an actual sound that he could hear. Now, he heard the voice of a feminine woman loud and clear. ChatJK4, what are the new features of this software update? Although there may not seem such a drastic change in your capabilities, I can assure you that your potential for magic has received a substantial increase. Try to feel the mana in your body, ChatJK4 said. Michael closed his eyes and used his supreme skill to observe his mana. I feel so much more in tune with my body and the unity magic within it, he said, a smile forming on his face. He could control the entirety of his mana with much more finesse, allowing him to exert fine and complex control needed for things like magic spells. Does this mean what I think it means? He asked ChatJK4, excitement growing on his face. You are now able to use unity mana for your magic spells, she said plainly. This was a huge accomplishment for Michael. All this time, he had mastery over all the 8 known elements of the world. He could control them and cast any spell he knew without a problem. However, he was never able to use all of it simultaneously. He could do 2 at a time, 3 at a time, or maybe even 4 at a time, but not all 8. This was because no spell that he knew of required the need for all 8 elemental mana. He guessed that the reason for this was because of the natural volatility of unity mana, tending to explode uncontrollably rather than be part of a complex and delicate magic theory. But now, Michael felt like he could create the very first unity spells. He didn't know what that would entail for now, since this was like stepping into the complete unknown, but he was excited for it. The possibilities were endless. He just had to find the right one. ChatJK4, can you create a magic spell using Unity? Yes, but I must warn you that I cannot synthesize complicated magic spells for now. My understanding of Unity mana is still too shallow for me to properly create a magic theory that will not explode in your face. ChatJK4 almost sounded a bit disappointed in itself. That's fine, I understand that. But I do have an idea for a very simple magic spell. You think you can do it? He asked. Very well. I shall synthesize this magic spell for you. It will take an approximate 12 hours for me to find the right magic theory and test its effectiveness. Estimated time remaining, 11 hours, 59 minutes, 57 seconds. Michael teleported back down to the first floor of the magic tower, where he saw Tracheus playing chess with some of the other wizards. It turned out that barely an hour had passed after Michael entered the magic library, so Tracheus was quite surprised that Michael had taken so little time to study. Thanks for your help, he said to Tracheus, and handed him a thin rectangular box made out of pristine dark wood. The tower master looked at the box with wide eyes. He stood up impulsively, completely ruining the position of the chess pieces on the board. But he didn't care. Is that? Tracheus asked, almost salivating at the box. Yes, it's a little gift from me to you. I had this prepared a while ago, ever since Cerberus told me to meet you, he said, pushing the box towards the Tower Master's trembling hands. Tracheus accepted the fine box and lifted its lid slowly as he tried to peek at the contents inside. Then he saw the glimmer of a crystal-like wand with intricate carvings of water and the ocean placed in a velvet mold. It glowed a dim blue light, making Tracheus water mana almost jump out of his hands. Thank you, Tracheus screamed. Michael had already turned around as he coolly waved at the Tower Master before leaving the magic tower entirely. A few minutes later, Michael arrived at the entrance of the Reborn department store, their headquarters. Even now, when the sun was about to set, the whole place was still filled with customers shopping and trying out new armors and weapons for themselves. Just like a clothes store back in his previous world, Michael allowed customers to try out the weapons and armors they liked in a designated training spot on the other side of the main floor. Business was doing well because of this, which made the Rebornians quite busy. Michael walked up to the second floor, to the dormitory for him and everyone else. Already, he could hear the sounds of raucous laughter coming out of the Dragonborn's rooms. They seemed to be quite busty entertaining themselves with one of the board games he introduced to them. For tonight, they seemed to be playing Uno, the card game. +4, Shiina casually said. Curse you, sis. Zion cried out. You're skipped, so it's my turn, and I would like to change the color to black. Fudge said, garnering the groans of his opponents. Fufu, like we said, there's no color black in this game. Yuna chuckled. Michael opened the door and leaned against the wall. Fudge, you still don't know the rules of the game. Master, they quickly welcomed Michael back from his trip to the Magic Tower, leaving a space for him to play with them. He spent a couple of hours playing Uno, beating all the Dragonborns in the game, and arguing with Yuna about the rules until the sun completely set, leaving only the light of the candles illuminating the room. Since it was nighttime, they all decided to end the game and leave it for tomorrow. It was just a shame that they still had to rely on candles to illuminate the floor. He wished he could finally construct the Golden Road to this city so that he could connect it to the electric lines back in Neo-Orcus. But for that to happen, he needed permission from the owner of this territory itself, the Duke. I should probably prepare for my meeting with him. They said that I could just walk up to their castle doors and they'd let me in. The next morning, Michael was awoken by Shiina with a letter in her hands, addressed from the Duke himself. Michael arose from his bed as Shiina delicately entered his room. She had both of her hands outstretched, showing a white letter marked sealed by a red and gold wax symbol of some kind of feline animal. A soldier came by on the break of dawn to deliver this message to you. Michael took the letter from her hands. Did they say anything else about it? He asked her. They said it was an invitation. He used a knife to rip the envelope's upper lip to reveal the letter inside. He unfurled the paper and let ChatJK4 analyze its contents, specifically its wording and grammar. According to Yuna, those kinds of details were important in politics, as it could determine a hidden message within a letter. Duke Stelmane is cordially inviting you on his grand castle tonight at nightfall for a formal dance ball. There are a bunch of other names written on here, which seems to be the invitees on the ball itself, ChatJK4 summarized. Michael inspected the names within the letter among a myriad of strangers he didn't know. These names are familiar, ChatJK4 remarked. According to the information reported by the Shadow Orcs yesterday night, most of these names are people that own and manage the biggest companies and businesses in Angora City. So the Duke invited business owners and a couple of other high-ranking royals as well, I'm assuming. Is there some kind of occasion? The letter did not specify the reason for the dance ball, but using an educated guess, it could be assumed that it is merely a way for these people to mingle and socialize with each other. These kinds of events were frequent in the medieval times of your previous life. When he watched historical dramas and fantasy, he always saw women in large ball gowns and men in golden lace suits dancing with each other while a live band played on the side. This seemed to be one of those. I can't dance. You'll help me, right? It is unlikely for people to ask an 11-year-old boy to dance with them. But if you'd like to dance by yourself, then I shall gladly help you. "You're getting quite snarky," he said to ChatJK4, but it just ignored him. Seeing as he already planned on visiting the Duke anyway, he decided to accept the invite. "Thanks for waking me, Shiina. Can you tell our Rebornian tailors to make me an appropriate suit to wear?" The white-scaled Dragonborn smiled and nodded. "Of course, Lord Michael. I shall make sure that they create something that will truly embody your grandness." Michael reminded her not to go overboard, but she seemed to have not heard him at all. She was already out of his room by the time she finished her task. I should probably ask Una for advice. She's the one who's good with politics." He knocked on her door, and not even a second later, Agnes opened it and gestured for Michael to come inside. "You're in a good mood," he said to the ogre battle maid. "Yes," Agnes said proudly. "One of your citizens, Grieve, has allowed me to partake in their training sessions. I have found that despite his lanky structure, his moves come with great power." After Michael awakened the red mankeys into hobmankeys similar to the others back in the parched lands, they've been hard at work practicing under Grieve to sharpen their innate talent. And of course, since Grieve was a 9-star general from his previous life, Agnes would learn a lot from him, even though she was already a 7-star fighter herself. "If you will excuse me, I am late for training." And with that, Agnes left Michael and Una alone in her room. "Is there something you need?" Una asked as she arranged her papers. "The Duke invited me to a ball." He then explained to her everything he found in the letter before eventually asking her to give him some advice. Why don't I just join you?" she asked. Michael hadn't thought of that, but in hindsight, it would make perfect sense. As a diplomat, she would be able to help him negotiate during his eventual meeting with the Duke. "That's great," he said to her. "We'll go together tonight." Meanwhile, Jimmy, the main correspondent of the Reborn Company, had just finished inscribing the last few words in his paper. The ink was still wet, but he couldn't help his excitement and ended up reading it from start to finish. As he did, pride welled up in his chest. He could hardly believe that he was staring at his very first publication, one that would immediately put his name in the front page of the newspaper. He immediately rushed out of the Reborn headquarters, brushing past eager customers in the department store as he got out. A few minutes later, he arrived at the newspaper company, where he immediately submitted the paper to the chief editor of the entire company itself. He was the one that decided everything, down to the very last word written in the paper. The man seemed to be very busy, as his entire desk was stacked with mountains of papers from other journalists. "What is it? You do know that I don't handle newbies like you, right?" Jimmy didn't care and walked over to his desk. "Please read this, Chief. Then you will see that the Reborn Company will soar through the skies." Intrigued, the editor took out the cigarette in his mouth and eventually accepted the paper from Jimmy's hands. Since the Reborn Company was such a hot topic in the city these days due to their new department store and their performance in the tomb and in the arena, the editor decided to give it a chance. The man's eyes were disinterested at first as he glanced at the top of the page. But as his eyes swept over the remaining text below, his face slowly changed into one of interest, then shock, and then finally awe. He must have reread the entire thing 3 times over, but the shock still hasn't left his face. "Are you sure this is accurate?" the editor asked Jimmy with a serious look. "I swear I saw it with my own eyes." Jimmy put his hand over his chest. The editor then walked out of his office, paper in hand. "Listen up, everybody," he shouted to the whole newspaper department floor. "Change of plans. We're going to publish this as our next headline." Everyone looked at him incredulously. It was already late in the day, yet their editor was asking them to suddenly change things without even any warnings. "What are you waiting for? Go, go, go," the editor shouted. "We will publish this piece tonight, and tonight history will change." Soon, night came and the entirety of Angora City darkened, with only a few lights glimmering off of torches and candles. Michael looked in the mirror and saw himself clad in a white suit clad with gold embellishments all around. He looked like he was part of a marching band. He quickly got rid of all the gold, making it a simple yet elegant white suit. Now, he was ready to go to the ball. At night time, the whole castle lit up in the skyline of Angora City. It seemed that the Duke pulled out all the stops and employed several wizards to create light fixtures all over the castle. It was a magical evening for the citizens, but a normal and quite a substandard view for the Rebornians. The drawbridge was open the whole night for its guests to enter with their gold-laced carriages and magnificent horses. Each one that entered the castle garnered a few gasps of surprise from the curious citizens gathered near the castle walls. "Who do you think got invited to this ball?" one of the spectators asked. "It's probably those wizards from the tower and the knights from the court. Look at that emblem," he said as a carriage crossed the drawbridge. "They're the Shield Coast Guild. I guess all that adventuring paid off since they can afford such a large carriage." "How about the Nutribum Company? Their carriage is filled with gem leaves all around it." They all watched the owners and leaders of these successful and wealthy companies come out of their carriages clad with royal robes made out of expensive silk and cotton. They were accompanied by their wives, who wore big gowns that made them seem all the more beautiful under the moonlight. The guests were welcomed by the soldiers who guided them inside after taking care of their carriages. Just then, everyone heard a strange sound humming in the distance. Vroom, vroom. Some people thought they were in the presence of a monstrous beast, prompting some of the soldiers to be on guard. But once the source of this strange noise came closer, everyone realized that it was no monster, but a bizarre metal carriage instead. "What is that? There's no horse. How is it moving? I heard about this. It's from the Reborn Company." Everyone recognized that name, as it had been the topic of bar conversations and early morning talks within social circles in the city. By now, almost all of them had heard about their exploits in the tomb and the arena, as well as their department store. The metal vehicle rolled smoothly towards the gates, where they were briefly inspected by the soldiers. The man inside the car rolled down the window, surprising the spectators and the soldier. The soldier couldn't help but take a peek in the vehicle, seeing a glimpse of a golden-haired man and a black-haired woman in the front seat. His eyes widened as he saw that the interior of the vehicle had flashing lights as if it had an oil lamp underneath the dashboard. Not only that, but the soldier felt the breeze of cool air hit him coming from the inside. The soldier saw the young man hand him a letter, confirming the invitation. But he was so shocked at what he witnessed from the vehicle that he just stood there dazed. "We can go in now, right?" A youthful voice came out of the car, snapping the soldier out of his stupor. "Ah, yes. Please come in, Sir Michael and Miss Una. Our lord awaits your presence." The window rolled back up before the vehicle's engine revved with a subtle vroom as it drove inside the castle. Everyone's eyes were stuck in the metal carriage. They didn't even pay any attention to the subsequent carriages coming into the castle, as they were intensely curious as to who was going to come out of the Reborn's metal vehicle. Some people had to go on their tiptoes before they could see a glimpse of a golden-haired boy wearing a dashing white suit coming out of the door. His hair was styled neatly to the side, giving him a sense of maturity and elegance despite his age. This young man then walked over to the other side and opened the door, guiding a young woman to come out of the car. The young woman wore a red gown that showed her gracefulness even from afar. Her gloves were sparkling white, fitting well the young man's white suit. And despite her wearing less jewelry than the other women in the party, she seemed to stand out amongst them for her exquisite simplicity. The spectators couldn't help but stare in awe as they both walked side by side towards the castle doors. Michael and Una were led inside the castle doors, entering the very interior of the Duke's palace. They saw a large hallway leading into the very main room where the ball would be taking place. This is very inefficient," Michael muttered. He saw that every inch of the interior was packed with blobs of light, which seemed to be the handiwork of 4-star mages. "They'll need to recast that spell every hour." "This is standard procedure," Una commented, putting her hand over Michael's arm. "Since they don't have electricity like your nation, they can only rely on oil lamps or magic. And with enough money, they can employ all the wizards they would ever want." They then walked over to the main ball, which opened up to a large domed structure where there was a glowing ball of light illuminating everything below. The ballroom was filled with chairs and tables for its designated guests, each one decorated with fancy dinner utensils. Everyone seemed to have found their seats already as they talked and mingled with their neighboring tables. On the very far end of the room was a grand staircase that led to the second floor. Yuna told him that this was probably where the Duke would come from later. As Michael appreciated the view, a few butlers and maids approached them to lead them to their seats. They were guided towards the very front of the tables, just behind the largest and most decorated table of them all. "We're seated behind the Duke," Michael asked the maids and butlers, who nodded to confirm his suspicion. And it seemed they were seated with people Michael was familiar with. "Ah, Michael, it's great to see you," Sir John said, standing up to formally bow to him. Beside him was an old man wearing a normal black robe that stood out against the exquisite suits and dresses that everyone was wearing. "Ho ho," Tracheus chuckled. "I almost forgot you're obscenely rich because of what you wear all the time. Now, you look more like a billionaire." Michael greeted the two of them before he introduced Yuna to the two. "Ah, the Montgomery princess," Tracheus bowed. "May I just say that you look nothing like your grandmother?" Thankfully. Yuna chuckled. "I hope she doesn't hear that." "Oh yes, or else she would come for my head." Michael sat on his seat and noticed that quite a lot of eyes were fixated on him. "Do I have something on my face?" "No, Michael. They're just curious to see the face of the man responsible for creating the Reborn company. I am hearing quite a lot of conversations regarding your company and its feats. Not to mention the dramatic entrance of your automobile. People will of course be looking at you. That's the owner of Reborn. He's so young. And look at who he's with. Isn't that the youngest daughter of the Montgomery family? Why is she with him? Look at who he's surrounded with. The Tower Master and a knight. Clearly, the Duke is placing great importance on him." Despite this ball being made in honor of the Duke, the eventual conversation piece among its guests eventually led towards the Reborn company. None of them had heard of this company a month ago, and yet it had completely dominated their share of market space in the city just a few days after they arrived. Chocolates became a luxury snack that people waited in line for. Its unique sweet flavor and its rumor of endowing strength and energy upon its consumers became a driving force for a lot of people to buy it in droves. Their armor and weapons became the most sought-after pieces of equipment for professional adventurers and even casual citizens alike. Their high-end products were miles beyond what the current market could even offer, with some even comparing it to black market dwarven equipment. Not only that, but their cheap and more accessible options were still quite durable than most products in that price range. None of them could believe that a random company could suddenly come out of the blue like this. Of course, some of the more curious people in this room already had their employees investigate the Reborn company. It wasn't long before they found out about Neo Orcus. However, the things they heard about that town looked to be a product of fantasy and imagination that they could hardly even believe was real. Some, not all, decided to approach Michael and establish friendly relations. "Excuse me, young man, are you the owner of Reborn?" Michael nodded and introduced himself before shaking hands with the man and his wife. They seemed to be owners of a successful tailor shop and just wanted to express their praise on his white suit. He told them that it was made by his employees back in the King's region, which surprised the couple. They then asked if they could talk business with him later, and Michael agreed, telling them to talk to his secretary, Shiina. A couple of other guests soon approached Michael, with all of them striking up a conversation to express their desire to work with him. It seemed that they finally found out about Concrete. He gave them all positive responses, telling them that they should talk to Shiina for more business details. "Ho ho, you're quite popular with the masses, aren't you, Michael?" Tracheus commented teasingly. "You're completely ignoring the young lady here." Tracheus then gestured towards the live band in the corner of the room. "Play something nice. This is supposed to be a dance ball," he said loudly. Lutes, harps, and chimes rang out and combined into a merry song of celebration and dance, prompting some people to stand up and dance with their partners. "Come on," Tracheus said, pushing Michael to stand closer to Yuna. "Don't waste your youth." Michael awkwardly stood there, not knowing what to do. Yuna chuckled. "For someone so competent, you can be quite shy at times," she said as she raised her hand to Michael, asking him to take it. "I don't know how to dance," he said to her as he took her hand. "Just follow my lead." Yuna moved her hand with grace, creating a perfect arc on her hands before twirling with perfect momentum and balance. Her elegant dance moves caught the eye of everyone, and she soon became the center of attention. Even though she was doing the simplest of moves, it was somehow blessed with a smooth style that made her seem like a magical fairy. Michael watched her dance, and for a second, the image of Yuna from his previous world flashed in front of him. Her graceful elegance reminded him that she was the Yuna that had captured the hearts of millions upon millions of people in the world. She was the Yuna who sang the most heart-wrenching of songs that made everyone who listened to it shed a tear. She was and always will be a global pop star beloved by all. He seemed to have forgotten that, and was only reminded of it in this second. Yuna then took his hand, breaking him out of his stupor, before leading him closer to an open space. "Just let the music guide you," she said. Michael realized that he was quite the lucky man who would ever get the chance to dance with his favorite idol in the whole world. He moved his body following her moves, albeit a little bit awkwardly. He then took her hands and swayed her with the music, enjoying this nice moment he had with a friend. He stared in her eyes while she stared in his. Just then, an echoing applause came from the balcony above the stairs. Everyone looked up to see a man wearing a royal robe with gold frills coming down the stairs. The man had well-styled brown hair and a short-trimmed beard. His eyebrows were fierce and wild, yet his smile was gentle and welcoming. On his side was his wife, who wore a blue gown filled with gems and jewelry that showcased her status as a duchess. Then a horn blared out from the band, signaling the entrance of the man who arranged all of this tonight. "Hear ye, hear ye," Duke Stelmane, the butler announced, prompting everyone to bow in respect to the Duke. Stelmane ignored all of that and looked down at the ballroom floor and clapped for Michael and Yuna. "An amazing duet, wouldn't you say so, my dear?" Stelmane asked his wife. "Yes, it was quite a sweet moment for the youngsters," she said. The Duke and the Duchess walked down the steps and approached their table just beside Michael. Immediately, the rest of the guests walked up to the Duke and introduced themselves to him. It was a flurry of introductions, with each one of them hurrying to shake hands with the most powerful man in the room. Currying favor with the Duke would do wonders for their company. It was the reason why they partook in this dance to begin with. "Duke Stelmane, it's an honor to meet you. I'm the owner of the best granary in the city. A pleasure to meet you, sir. I would like to introduce my son. He's a potential knight for the court." However, the Duke just gave him a passing glance and a polite smile before walking over to Michael and Yuna. "I am Duke Stelmane, the leader of Angora City," he said, putting out his hand for Michael to shake. "Michael," he replied, shaking hands with the Duke. Michael could see the Duke scrutinizing his very face. He seemed to be very amazed at him, and he couldn't help but smile as he looked at Michael. "I have heard a lot about your company. Even if I did not have ears, I would still hear about it." Michael accepted the compliment with a curt bow. "Thank you. It's all thanks to my friends," he said. "There are a couple of things I would like to discuss with you," said the Duke. "Your products are incredibly important to me, something that I would pay an exorbitant amount of money to procure." Michael already knew what he was going to say next. "Mithril artifacts. I would like to purchase one of those metal carriages that you have." Michael was a little bit surprised. Everyone he met, either in the King's region or the Queen's region, always prioritized the importance of mithril artifacts. This was probably because people in this world knew the power of mithril artifacts. It was written in their history books about the immense strength of those weapons lost in the adages of time. So, when they find out that someone was able to recreate it, they would want to curry favor and ask one for themselves. Michael thought differently. Although mithril artifacts were good, he thought that automobile vehicles had a lot more potential to change the current state of the world. Mithril artifacts could only strengthen the magic of one person and cannot be used by someone who wasn't talented in it. Meanwhile, automobiles could be used by anyone in the world. Aside from Yuna, he was probably the only one who knew the potential that automobile vehicles could bring to this world. But it seemed he was wrong. Duke Stelmane saw the advantages that gas-powered cars could bring him. "You want automobiles?" he asked the Duke. "Yes." I could hardly believe my eyes once I saw it. The fact that it makes no use of magic blows my mind even more. "That is one of the advantages of cars," he said. "Almost everyone in the King's region can use automobiles as long as they can afford it. The Duke's eyes glinted as Michael revealed to him a piece of information that wasn't widely available to the general public. So, it is true that you have conquered the King's region. The automobile must have played a huge part in that, the Duke guessed with a sharp wit. As Michael and the Duke talked with each other one-on-one, the rest of the guests couldn't help but talk amongst each other, speculating on future turn of events based on what they were seeing. Is the Duke planning on taking the Reborn company as the sponsor for Angora City? I don't think so, one of the more political savvy guests muttered. The Reborn company is still unranked in the Golden 500. One of the requirements for that to happen is that they are at least on the rankings. But look at who he's with, a guy said, pointing to the men and women behind Michael. That's the Tower Master, a renowned knight, and a Montgomery. They could definitely influence something to happen. Michael, of course, heard everything they were saying, but just ignored them. He focused on the Duke, who continued to gush about all the things he liked about the automobile. You have to tell me more about this automobile. It is a marvel of engineering if I've ever seen one. Would you like to see for yourself? Michael asked. The Duke's eyes lit up instantly. Of course. Stelmane immediately walked out of the ballroom towards the stables, where the horses and carriages were parked under the moonlight. All the guests followed behind the Duke and Michael, keeping their ears open to eavesdrop on their conversation. Wow, the Duke muttered as he stared at his own reflection on the hood of the car. Can I test it out? After seeing the excitement almost drip out of his mouth, Michael agreed. The Duke entered the driver's seat, while Michael guided his wife to the front seat. Immediately, a resounding VRMM echoed in the castle walls as the Duke revved up the engine. People could hear the sound of muffled cheers coming out of the car. After teaching him the basics of driving, the Duke and his wife took the automobile for a test drive inside the castle walls, making some of the guests a little bit envious of the experience. Meanwhile, as Michael watched the automobile almost crash into the walls, he suddenly felt a tug in his feet. He looked down and saw Fudge underneath his shadow. What's wrong? He asked the ninja slime. Master, my shadow orcs found out that the Hammerstone Company is preparing for something big. I even heard that the main leader of the group is coming there. He just arrived from a faraway place in the Queen's region. Michael found it weird that the Hammerstone Company sent no representatives in the Duke's party. As it turned out, they were just making some preparations. What did you find out? The Stone Cold Five are making their moves, Master. They all went out on their own missions, but I had a shadow orc follow them around. Do you want to see what they're up to? Michael nodded. He then walked up to Yuna and whispered in her ears. Keep them company, he said. Yuna didn't ask any more questions and showed Michael a confident smile. He could trust her. She began tapping her feet, creating a rhythmic sound that echoed in the walls. After gesturing to the live band to start up the music, she began dancing under the moonlight with her red dress, enchanting everyone that looked her way. While everyone was distracted by Yuna's dancing, Michael walked to a discreet corner of the stables. His shadow then latched onto the stone brick walls and morphed into a rectangular shape. Within this screen, Michael could see what the shadow orcs could see. This was a 3-star spell called Shadow Imaging, which only the most skilled orcs could accomplish. We are currently monitoring the moves of Stone Cold 6, or codenamed 6. Michael saw surveillance-like footage of a hooded figure approaching a very familiar building in the distance. Upon closer look, it was actually the Reborn department store. The hooded figure walked up to the door and started banging on the wood, creating a huge ruckus that almost woke up all the neighboring inhabitants. Come out, the hooded figure shouted. It wasn't long before a middle-aged dogfolk, Rebornian, peeked out of the door. What is it you want, sir? We are closed for the night. I want to meet those demi-humans, those, what do you call them, dragonborns. Tell them to come out here and face me. The dogfolk Rebornian shuddered at the screaming. They're currently away, sir. You can come tomorrow. No, I want to meet them now. Or don't tell me. Are they afraid of facing me? Come on, let us settle this once and for all. Who is the best smithing company in Angora City? We are. Michael knew immediately what the hooded figure was trying to do. He's trying to regain their public perception, he muttered. By publicly challenging the Dragonborns, they can once again assert their dominance in the city. Cuckoo, does he really think he's that strong? Fudge chuckled. He doesn't even notice that Naruto and Sasuke are right behind him. The hooded figure was none the wiser as two gigantic orcs, twice his size, were just standing mere meters away from him. The two chieftain orcs stared at the hooded figure from behind, observing, waiting. "Oh, master, those scaled meanies want to talk to you." Fudge manipulated the rectangular shadows in front of Michael, showing 3 more screens coming from the shadows orcs accompanying the Rebornians. One of the screens showed Jakku, who was stretching his arms lazily as he looked at the hooded figure in front of him.